In the world's fastest sports cars are famous drivers from all areas of motorsport. Nearly 20 ex-F1 stars, as well as experienced endurance racers and young guns of the future. But it's the cars that are the stars in this series. If you've $1 million to spare, you could take your pick of race-prepared supercars that have F1 power and speed. Most spectacular of all is the Mercedes CLK, built just days before the first round.
I think it's a nice-looking car. It has got great potential. It's definitely not a race winner yet. We won the first race already. It took time. It took place in the winter time. It was really tough working between 6th of December and Friday before Easter when the car ran first. So I think this was for us a big satisfaction. And well, winning the first race is not a realistic goal.
But with the talents of Bernd Schneider and Alessandro Nannini on board, Mercedes are serious title contenders. The McLaren is an endurance racing champion. The Gulf team won the title last year with Englishman Ray Bell. His main challenge comes from the Works BMW McLaren pair JJ Leto and Britain's Steve Soap.
The championship's new to everybody. The competition is new to everybody. We've tested a lot, but unfortunately nobody's tested with us. So we don't really know what the others are capable or even up to. So this is a learning curve for everybody. We'll have to just wait to see, you know, what comes at sort of after 4 hours where we are, if we're happy or unhappy.
And Belm knows he's got a fight on his hands this season.
It's very competitive. There are actually 15 cars capable of winning. And it's tighter than it's ever been. I've now done this for 3 years, and this is the tough one.
Porsche are here in force. Their main hope lies with veteran Hans-Joachim Stuck and Thierry Boutsen in the Works GT1. Many think the Lotus is the prettiest car in the pit lane, but there are doubts about its speed and reliability. Perhaps the American Panoz is not so pretty, but underneath lurks a high-tech front-engine Reynard chassis. Drivers include Brits James Weaver and Le Mans winner Andy Wallace.
So it's Schneider in the Mercedes on pole, Leto alongside, ready for what should be a fascinating first round. 45 cars lined up for the start. That's Justin Bale's teammate Tommy Archer getting comfortable in the Viper. They should be the favourites in the GT2 class, fastest in practice, and their main threat probably from the other two Orica Vipers.
This magnificent field of 45 GT cars completing their rolling lap as the pace car pulls into the pit lane. The silver Mercedes of Bernd Schneider on pole, the white McLaren of JJ Leto alongside, McLaren and Mercedes on row 2. The light is red, now the light is green, the race is on, and Bernd Schneider gets the jump. It's Schneider's Mercedes going in front with Leto in second place. In third place, it's the other Mercedes of Nannini, very crowded in that first corner, and as they come out, there's a Porsche spinning. That's Hans Stuck. Hans Stuck has spun the Works Porsche right in the middle of the pack on the first corner, but at the front, the McLaren is starting to ease away from the Mercedes. McLaren 1, Mercedes 2, Mercedes 3, going down to the first chicane. JJ Leto leaves his braking as late as possible. It's Leto who leads. It's Schneider in second place, it's Nannini in third place, then it's the McLarens of Goulon, Cox, Nielsen, and Andrew Gilbert-Scott is in seventh place. Then it's the Jan Lammers Lotus. He managed to avoid the spinning Porsche of Hans Stuck, so he's in eighth place, and Stuck has got going again. Stuck is right at the tail of the field, but as they come up now to the second chicane, one of the Mercedes has slowed. It's Bernd Schneider who's lost his second place, fallen back into the clutches of the rest of the McLaren, so now second is the Mercedes of Alessandro Nannini, but it looks as though Bernd Schneider, the pole position Mercedes, is already in trouble. There now is Leto easing away from Nannini. The rest of the McLarens following through. Nielsen running right over the curbs, kicking up the dust, but everybody else getting through, although the flag marshal's got his yellow flag waving already, and Leto comes down the straight into the stadium to complete the first lap. It's Leto, Nannini, Goulon, Cox, Nielsen, then Gilbert-Scott, the two bright yellow Lotuses, you can't miss them, and the rest of the field three abreast. There's the Panoz, and Lammers is still out there and doing well. Yellow flags waving, a GT2 Porsche just recovering from a spin. And look at Nannini weaving his way through the traffic in that wonderful looking silver Mercedes. Tremendously potent looking car indeed. Remember, it's absolutely brand new. They've had virtually no testing. They've really only just got that car screwed together. And Nannini must be very pleased that although his teammate has had problems, he's still there with the flying hands. Stuck, both of them headlights blazing. Stuck, of course, making up time after having restarted at the back of the field. JJ Leto has led this race right from the beginning. And now we've got, for the first time this year, a gauge of the performance differential between the latest McLaren and the GT1 Porsche. Stuck certainly doesn't want to make it easy for JJ Leto. They're coming down the straight, getting up to 200 miles an hour, and the McLaren pulls out of the slipstream, leaves his braking late and goes ahead. So the leader laps Hans Stuck, but Stuck is going to try and hang on, because if he can follow the leader through, he's trying to get up through the field after his earlier delay, and he could get a good route past the slower cars. They're with one of the Vipers now, and look at JJ Leto ruthlessly goes past the Viper, and so does Hans Stuck. He's tucked in the slipstream of the McLaren, and he of course has made up. And there's Pierre-Henri Raffanel, Jean-Marc Gounon's co-driver. The Gounon McLaren in third place at the moment, comes in for its routine stop. Now let's watch this, because the rules this year say that while you're refueling the car, you're not allowed to start working on the wheels and tyres. The wheels and tyres, one mechanic only each side, they're waiting impatiently while in goes the fuel. And you'll see that once the fuel has finished going in, then the two wheel and tyre mechanics can start. They have to do both front and rear each side. And here's our man just starting now, because they finished refueling. He does one front wheel, wheel off, new wheel on goes the wheel nut, and when he's finished that, he's got to run to the back and get the rear tyre done, and that one off, that one on. Much longer pit stops, therefore, than we're used to seeing in Formula One racing, and it all is part of the emphasis in endurance racing on the pit work. They also have to stop the engine during the pit stop, and they're starting it up again. No, there's a problem on the right rear. They haven't got the right rear finished. He's going to have to turn the engine off again. He does so, the engine off, and they're working on the right rear, and this is bad news for Gounon and Raffanel, because this car was in third place. It's going to be slipping down the order, I think. Now they've got it right. Out of the pits he goes, but he's dropped down to fifth place now. In comes the Mercedes of Alessandro Nannini. Will the fuel rig reach? Looks as though he's parked too far away. Well, the mechanics managed to get the fuel line on now, but that looked like quite a problem for a moment. Nannini talking to his co-driver there, Marcel Thiemann. Now he's coming over to talk to the chief mechanic, telling him what's going on inside that Mercedes. Lots of action in the pits now, because we've got Hans Stuck in. They're changing the wheels. Thierry Boutsen climbing aboard. And now there's the leader, JJ Leto, in the pits. Hands over to Steve Soper. It's all going well for Leto.
I think that the biggest trouble was to get my Mercedes, in the beginning, and then I just kept my pace, basically. It was a lot of overtaking, and sometimes you lost, sometimes you gained, but I wasn't pushing 100%, we were just sort of trying to save the tires and everything for Steve as well.
Here is the work going on the Mercedes. They haven't got that Mercedes out of the pits yet. Soper back in the race, still on the same set of tyres. They didn't change tyres on that car. Obviously the tyre wear is well under control. Steve Soper still has the lead. The formerly second place Mercedes of Alessandro Nannini still in the pits. There's a McLaren missing. There it is. That's the Peter Cox third place McLaren. That's the Lotus crawling back to the pits. But Peter Cox's McLaren is parked out on the circuit. There's the leading car passing its teammate. So Peter Cox's car has come to a complete halt. That's one of the major McLarens, one of the BMW Schnitzer-entered McLarens stopped, but the other one still comfortably leading the race, lapping the other Panoz. So still Steve Soper. Ray Bellum is now taking it out again. A brilliant double stint by Gilbert Scott.
I felt I could have gone quicker, but I didn't want to take any risks. Obviously, I think that gave us some more fuel, because when I came in for my first fuel stop, which was, our strategy, which we've kept to, we really could have stayed out there a lot longer. The fuel meter was reading very, very well, and the tyres have been terrific. So, and apparently just now when they came off the car, they could have done another stint.
But in that pit stop, the Ray Bellum, Andrew Gilbert Scott McLaren has dropped to third place behind the Gunnar Raffanel McLaren. There is Ray Bellum with on his tail now the white McLaren, the leader, Steve Soper, coming up in first place to lap the McLaren in third place, and a couple of GT2 Porsches ahead of them, and ahead of them the second placed car now of Gunnar Raffanel as Steve Soper laps the third place McLaren as they come down into the chicane. And Steve Soper so quick through these back markers, absolutely relentless. You'll see him just, I'm sure, shovel those two little Porsches out of the way, and past he does indeed go. Ray Bellum, Mercedes back in the race. They've got the Nannini car out again, and they've put Bernd Schneider in it, because Bernd Schneider, very much the Mercedes #1, has been nominated for both cars. And while one of the Mercedes is still left in the pits, this one is out in the race once more. Long way behind, but still running very quickly, running ahead of Emmanuel Kolarov in the red and white GT1 Porsche, twitching through the corner onto the start-finish straight. So at least some laps getting under the belt of the Mercedes team, even though they're completely out of the running here at Hockenheim. McLaren behind him, a lap behind him, is Thomas Boucher in third place, but behind Boucher and catching him very fast, Thierry Boutsen in the Porsche. We've got a real battle on for third place now. There is Boutsen. They've come all the way up, have Boutsen and Stuck, from dead last to fourth place now, and to the dismay of John Nielsen, who's watching from the pits, his co-driver Thomas Boucher is getting caught by that flying Mobil 1 #6 Porsche of Thierry Boutsen. 3 times a Grand Prix winner, one of the greatest drivers to come out of Belgium is Thierry Boutsen, and he loves this sort of challenge. He can see the McLaren ahead of him. Look at him using the curbs, flinging that wild-looking GT1 Porsche, nothing like a Porsche 911. It shares just a little bit of 911 silhouette, but it's pure GT racing car underneath. And Thierry Boutsen, just like Hans Stuck, getting absolutely the best out of it. Headlights on for both of them, and Boucher doing everything he can, but the Porsche is right under his rear wing now, getting into the slipstream. Boutsen's going to pull out and try and get by any minute, surely. Yes, he does, but Boucher shuts the door on him. Boucher just moves across. Boutsen tries to get the other side, and now as they come up into the chicane, Boutsen cannot get in front. Boucher shuts the door for the second time. Thomas Boucher absolutely determined to shut Thierry Boutsen out. Thierry Boutsen isn't going to like that. He's going to get a run on him, surely now. Yes, now he gets on the inside. Can he stay there as they go flat out down that slight right-hand curve that leads into the second chicane? Boutsen has the inside line. They're wheel to wheel, and Boutsen is ahead. Thierry Boutsen takes third place. The battle's going on all the way down. You wouldn't think this was an endurance race. It's a flat-out battle around Hockenheim. And now McLaren's no longer have the top 3 positions, because into third place has become the Porsche. There is the leading McLaren, however, still there, well clear of everybody else. I say well clear, but in fact Steve Soper's lead is only 1 minute at the moment. Steve still matching JJ Leto's lap times, very quick, very consistent, but if you're only 60 seconds ahead, it only takes a tiny problem in a pit stop to throw all that away. Place Porsche coming into the pits. Thierry Boutsen brings that Porsche in, Hans Stuck is waiting to take it out again, and John Nielsen's gone through. John Nielsen goes down the start-finish straight over the start-finish line. It's McLaren 1, 2, 3 once more. On his final lap, comes round to take the checkered flag. JJ Leto and Steve Soper win here at Hockenheim the opening round of the 1997 FIA GT Championship. A great win for Leto and Soper.
Well, congratulations, Steve. Tremendous start to the season for you.
Yes, very good, isn't it? Good feeling now, 4 hours later. Very good.
You can stop worrying at last.
Yeah, go and worry. I had to get up on the rostrum and congratulate JJ.
Yeah, and it's a celebration, obviously, for everyone involved, not just the drivers.
No, I think the team played a big part. Our strategy and our pit stops, everything ran very well. We had no problems with the car, no problems at all. So you have to take your hats off to McLaren and BMW.
And there's Charlie Lamb being congratulated by the rest of the Schnitzer BMW team. A tremendous effort by all of them. There's the GT2 winner, Olivier Beretta and Philippe Gache in the rumbling V10 Viper. And here is our second place man, Jean-Marc Gounon, brings the Gulf McLaren home in second second place, despite what the computer was telling us. He never did lead this race, but an excellent second place and the middle of a McLaren 1-2-3. There's the Mercedes, the last classified finisher, as Pierre-Henri Raffanel gets the congratulations of the rest of the teams, second and third for the Gulf McLaren. CLK was quickest in practice in the hands of Bernd Schneider. He's been testing hard since the disappointments of round 1 at Hockenheim.
Yeah, we are very comfortable this time because we made so many tests and the car feels so good over the distances and was very good always. We almost finished all our distance, and that means we're looking forward for the race.
The big surprise of qualifying came from the Dave Price Panoz team. David Brabham and Perry McCarthy dug deep late in the session and planted the Reynard-designed car with its rumbling Ford V8 on the front row, next to the mighty Mercedes. David Brabham will be on board the Panoz for the start. He's very experienced, but there's no shortage of advice either, with his dad spectating.
David's pretty good in the wet. Only thing, I'm not sure he's on the right tyres for the wet, mind you, but I think he'll go pretty well, actually, yeah.
Also turning a few heads on its first appearance in the series is the Parabolica McLaren of the Brits Gary Ailes and Chris Goodwin. They'll start from row 4.
I think we've actually got a very good chance. We're a good pair and we can both run the same times, which is important in this long distance racing. You both have to be on the pace, and I think we're where we are. So I think providing we keep it all together and there's no dramas, then yes, we have a good chance of getting a result.
I think we've surprised a lot of people by how quickly we got onto the pace, and we've got quite a few more things in store as well to improve the car. Maybe that might see us creep up a bit further than where we are already.
The two BMW McLarens will start from row 2. Steve Soper and JJ Leto were planning on a front row spot, but were caught out in practice by the unpredictable weather. And it's a rolling start. Mercedes and Panoz row 1, McLaren's row 2, Mercedes and McLaren row 3, and as they come round onto the start-finish straight, the race is on. 47 magnificent GT supercars with Schneider's Mercedes leading into Copse. Then the Panoz in second place, the two BMW McLarens, the other Mercedes is in 5th place, and off goes the Porsche GT1 of Emmanuel Collard. Still the GT2 cars crossing the start-finish line on this huge grid, but already the magnificent Mercedes is pulling away with the Panoz in a tremendous second place. Then the rest of the field funneling through Beckett's and on to Chapel Curve. The Mercedes is on the hangar straight now, the Panoz with his headlights on. That's David Brabham, but Bernd Schneider with the car dancing about a fair bit on the bumps. There's a lot of water on the track, a lot of surface water still as he slides through Stowe Corner, goes on towards Club, and look at the lead that Mercedes has. The Panoz still second, then the two BMW powered McLarens third and fourth, then Alessandro Nannini and the other Mercedes, there he is in 5th place, and a whole phalanx of McLarens following through, but an enormous lead for Bernd Schneider already, out of Club Corner, up towards Abbey Curve. It's David Brabham in the Panoz in second place, then the two BMW McLarens with JJ Leto leading Peter Cox, then Alessandro Nannini's Mercedes, then John Nielsen's McLaren. Oh, and going off is the Parabolica McLaren. Just a glimpse there of Gary Ailes going way off, and now he comes back on, doesn't seem to have damaged the car any, but he's lost an awful lot of places in that superbly brightly turned out car. There's the Panoz in second place. What an unmistakable silhouette, a front-engine car, of course, and an unmistakable exhaust note. And this superb Mercedes going through Woodcote, shaving a tight apex as he goes on to the start-finish straight. And he has almost completely empty road behind him all the way down that straight before we get the second-place Panoz. And JJ Leto is attacking, but there's a yellow flag. He's not allowed to overtake under a yellow, so he hangs back. And there is another Porsche in the gravel, two more Porsches in straight line power with this big V8 powered machine, and he's holding off the V12 McLarens. I wonder for how much longer as they go down the hangar straight. JJ Leto pulls onto the inside and goes easily through at Stowe Corner, and David Brabham lets him go. It's a long race, a 4-hour race, and he can afford to let him go, but there's a Mercedes elbowing through too. That's Alessandro Nannini, who's come past Peter Cox and has gone up to 4th place. So it's Mercedes, McLaren, Panoz, Mercedes, McLaren. That's the top 5. Alessandro Nannini storming on because he certainly won't want to lose touch with the hair of this race, which is his teammate. And now the Mercedes attacks the Panoz as well, weaves a little bit under braking, but gets ahead going into Abbey Curve. So now the Mercedes of Nannini is 3rd. The Mercedes of Schneider leads, the McLaren of JJ Leto is 2nd, and the McLaren of Peter Cox is 5th. There is the Mercedes, and behind him is Leto, the leader, and the 2nd place Mercedes, both in the pit lane, and the slick tyres are ready. They don't look like slicks, actually. I think they're putting intermediate tyres on that car. So it looks like intermediates for Bernd Schneider. They change his tyres. I can't see from here what is going on the McLaren, but certainly the other cars were on slicks. Intermediates on that Mercedes. There we see slicks. Slicks on the JJ Leto McLaren. They're all making their own bit of weather forecasting, but one of the Panoz is in the lead now. Because of all these pit stops, the yellow Lotus, you can see it at the front of that trio, that yellow Lotus driven by the 2 Dutchmen, Jan Lammers at the wheel at the moment, Mike Hesselman's waiting to take over. That car is still on wet weather tyres, and Jan Lammers leads the race here at Silverstone. John Nielsen in the blue and red Gulf McLaren is now 2nd. Peter Cox in the BMW entered McLaren is in 3rd place. But Jan Lammers, the little ex-Formula 1 driver, one of Holland's greatest, loves these sports cars and is really charging. The McLarens should be a lot quicker than him. They're winding him in on what is still a greasy surface, and I would think that Jan Lammers can't stay out on his wet weather tyres for very much longer, unless, of course, the weather changes. Peter Cox having a little nibble there at John Nielsen. The 2 McLarens running very, very closely indeed. Jan Lammers about to be held up by a GT2 Porsche, and that's going to let the McLarens get a bit closer as they go through the Beckett complex to Chapel Curve and onto the Hangar Straight. Lammers 1, Nielsen 2, Cox 3, and now Lammers. Oh, Lammers isn't going past that. I think Lammers is in trouble. Lammers slows, Lammers loses the lead. It's now Nielsen leading. It's Peter Cox into 2nd place. I don't know what's happened to Jan Lammers' Lotus, but just as we were watching it, the car seemed almost to the pit lane. We've now got those 2 leading McLarens. Peter Cox, in fact, coming into the pit lane just in front of John Nielsen. They must have swapped places just as they came into the pits. So once more, the race order changes as into the pits they come. Clean the windscreen. What's going to go on? They're refueling it, and you're not allowed to change the tyres until you finish refueling. There's one of the Vipers in as well, but on go, I think, slick tyres. Pretty sure they were slicks, and he accelerates out, and John Nielsen's pit have got him out before Peter Cox's. So John Nielsen retakes the lead in that particular battle, although of course they've both lost the lead. Out on the circuit, it's now Porsches 1 and 2. Pedro Lami's Porsche, there it is, just running ahead of one of the Vipers, is in the lead, and in 2nd place the similar GT1 Porsche of Ralph Kellener's and Yannick Dalmas, following him through the G2 traffic. They're just coming up against the bright yellow Marcos, another front engine car, a very dramatic looking machine about to be swallowed up by Pedro Lami's Lotus. That's the Marcos. Lamy goes inside the Marcos, and following through is Ralph Kellener's. So Porsche's now 1 and 2, but there's a McLaren coming back up again. That's JJ Leto, and Pedro Lamy is caught by JJ Leto. He's blocked by the Scatarella Lotus briefly, but the McLaren is now back on the Porsche's tail, making up time after its pit stop. Porsche 1, McLaren 2, and if you look behind there, the silver car coming into the picture in 3rd place is the Bernd Schneider Mercedes, now being driven by Alex Wurz, his co-driver. So it's Porsche, McLaren and Mercedes, but it's now McLaren, Porsche, Mercedes, because JJ Leto's gone ahead, and look at Alex Wurz trying to get past the Pedro Lamy Lotus, and he does so, storms up the inside coming into Abbey. So the tremendous speed of these V12 supercars has taken Leto back into the lead, has got Wurz up into second place, Lamy still is in third place. There is Leto, Archer and Justin Bell in second place. But now here's the battle for the lead, because we've got Steve Soper in the McLaren that was started by JJ Leto. We've got Roberto Ravaglia in the McLaren that was started by Peter Cox, and they're working their way through among the Porsches GT1 and GT2. There's the Panoz, which is now well down the field with Perry McCarthy and David Brabham. But these two McLarens are on the same lap. They're battling over the lead, and Steve Soper, a man who of course knows his way around Silverstone very well indeed, on the tail now of the Panoz and about to lap it as they come through Bridge and into Prairie. And they both that go past that Panoz do the two FIA BMW McLarens, and they are looking very, very... And this is the Thierry Boots and Hans Stuck Porsche getting it all wrong. They started 15th, they've been moving up through the field, but they're going way off course. The car comes straight without hitting anything, but the news now is that we've got a new leader. This McLaren, this brightly painted Parabolica car with two British drivers, has now come to the head of the heap. Chris Goodwin in the car he's sharing with Gary Ailes leads. The McLaren in second place is Pierre-Henri Raffanel. That's the Gulf car. The Mercedes of Bernd Schneider and Alex Wurz is third. In fourth place is the Peter Cox McLaren, and the second Mercedes is now in the pits. The Alessandro Nannini Mercedes in the pits with problems, and that's promoted Steve Soper back up to fifth place with his McLaren. It's the second place McLaren. We've now got four McLarens in the top five, with only the third place Mercedes breaking the run of McLaren BMWs at this moment, and the sun's come out again. We've actually got a bit of sunshine, even though it's still very wet in the pits, as Chris Goodwin brings that car in to hand over to Gary. And it's raining heavier than ever now here at Silverstone, and Alex Wurz, look at him sliding that Mercedes, struggling for grip, but he's in the lead because the Raffanel Bell Gilbert Scott McLaren is in the pits for a routine stop. Mercedes therefore back in the lead, and he's catching up that extraordinary little blue Morgan, an incredible car of a much earlier era, driven by Charles Morgan, the grandson of the founder, and Bill Wickham. And as he squeezes through on the inside, Morgan doesn't give him an awful lot of room. Oh, and look, there's a Panoz off as well. A lot of action there. That is Perry McCarthy going off in the Panoz. They're down in 16th place now. And I'm wondering if that Mercedes is on the intermediate tyres, because he seems to be having terrible trouble controlling the car. And there's the Mauro Martini Lotus, which seems to have come to a halt. I didn't see whether it spun or simply ground to a technical halt. But Wurz pressing on, despite his trouble, apparently, with grip. He's storming through the traffic, and here there's a bit of a dry line, as you can see. He is very careful to try and make sure he keeps the Mercedes on the slightly drier line and off the really slippery, really reflective, mirror-like surface off that line. And in comes Alex Wurz finally. He's coming in, and I am sure they're going to put some slightly more suitable tyres on that Mercedes. And that means, of course, that he's going to lose the lead, and we've got the Pierre-Henri Raffanel, Ray Belm, Andrew Gilbert Scott McLaren back in the lead now. The lead changing constantly here, as indeed is the weather, and that's a Viper spinning way off. Oh, thump into the bank and back, spinning across the track right in front of the rest of the traffic. That was Jari Nurmanen's Viper. There's a GT2 Porsche off. It's pouring with rain now. That same Mustang has gone off. We've got yellow flags, as if the drivers needed to be reminded that the conditions are now becoming absolutely impossible. It's pelting with rain. The track is completely flooded. The cars are travelling at very much reduced speed. I don't think I've ever seen in 40 years of coming to Silverstone flooding quite like this. It's absolutely dreadful, and even though the rain once more has eased, the circuit is like a lake. That's Pedro Lamy's GT1 Porsche. He's off now, dug deep into the gravel, and still it's so wet that the speeds are getting lower and lower, and still the cars seem to have no grip. That's Gerd Ruch in the short-tailed McLaren. It's like a powerboat. I mean, that's not a racing car, it's a boat. In fact, the little GT2 Porsche is able to go quicker with the leading McLaren coming up behind it rather cautiously. That's Pierre-Henri Raffanel once more. And now the safety car's coming out. Well, I'm not surprised. I don't know whether that's purely because of the conditions or because they've got to clear some of the stranded cars out of the gravel. But out comes the safety car deluge, and into the pits now has to come that McLaren. But Pierre-Henri Raffanel coming in for a driver change because he's now done the maximum amount of time in that car he's allowed to do by the regulations, and the safety car pulls off. Amazingly, this race is on once again. The track is as flooded as ever. It's still pouring with rain. We've still got 45 minutes of this race to run, but there is Peter Cox. Oh, and he nearly goes off the road. Quite extraordinary. He's coming down the straight and the car almost getting away from him, but he's gathered it back together again. The green flag says the race is on. People are creeping round, but Peter Cox fishtailing down the straight. 600 horsepower of V12 BMW in the back of that McLaren. It's not an easy car to drive, even in the dry. And in these conditions, it must be almost impossible as he comes down the hangar straight, comes down to Stowe Corner. The track is absolutely awash, turns into Stowe Corner. The car once more weaving. He's fighting for control, but he knows he's got to keep the pressure on because the Mercedes of Bernd Schneider is pursuing him. There's the Parabolica McLaren in the pits. It's a routine stop. That's dropped them to 6th, but they're still well placed. But look at this battle we've got on for the lead, because now the McLaren of Peter Cox has the Mercedes of Bernd Schneider in its mirrors, and despite the terrifying conditions, these two are fighting for victory here at Silverstone. Look at the speed of these high-geared windscreen wipers shoveling the water away from the windscreen as they try to get some visibility. Clouds of spray. There are back markers to go round. They've got their headlights on, and now the Mercedes is drawing up alongside. Can he possibly find a way round? He can't see, and he has to drop back. Still Peter Cox leads. Bernd Schneider in 2nd place. McLaren versus Mercedes, and now the Mercedes comes back again as they go down towards Beckett's. The Mercedes is on the inside. He can't do it there either. There's no grip. They're going up to 160, 170 miles an hour. The track is awash. They've got absolutely no grip, but Bernd Schneider wants this to be a Mercedes victory. McLaren, who use the Mercedes engine in Formula 1, use a BMW engine in GT racing, and this is really BMW versus Mercedes. They're on the hangar straight now, and now this is Bernd Schneider's effort. They're going up to 165, 170 miles an hour in the rain. The windscreen wipers wiping away, and the Mercedes is on the outside. Surely that's not going to do him any good. But as Peter Cox gets on the brakes, the Mercedes goes ahead. The Mercedes leads. Bernd Schneider retakes the lead here at Silverstone, and Peter Cox's McLaren BMW is pushed down to 2nd place, and one of the McLarens has gone off. That is the short-tailed car. That's Gerd Ruch. A big accident. He's gone off at Woodcote. He's perfectly all right. He's stepping over the barriers, but we see it again, and the car went very heavily backwards into the barriers. And I think this race is getting very, very dangerous indeed. I wonder how much longer it can go on. Oh, there's a Viper going now. That is the class-leading Viper, hard into the, not only hard into the bank, it ends up against the McLaren, and now we've got a red flag. And I have to say, I think not before time. So that is looking like a truncated race. That's looking like a Mercedes victory. Celebrations for Stuttgart, a win for Bernd Schneider and for his teammate, Alex Wurz.
Bernd and me, I think we did a good job. We was always on the maximum, on the limit, and it's really, really great for us and for Mercedes.
Well, just minutes later, the faces of the Mercedes pit crew tell a different story. The FIA race stewards declared the finish was a lap before Schneider took the lead, and that means Peter Cox and Roberto Ravaglia take the win. So a rather fortunate victory for the number 9 BMW McLaren. Mercedes in 2nd place, and the first round winners Leto and Soper 3rd this time. Goodwin and Els were unlucky in 6th.
Well, here in Helsinki, it's not quite as glamorous as Monaco, but it's just as demanding for the drivers, and GT qualifying on this tight track has certainly been entertaining. pipped at the post by McLaren in the last round, Mercedes were determined to qualify well. And they were occupying the front row when, late in the final session, Boldrini's Lotus blew its engine and put down a lot of oil. Not content with that, it then went merrily on fire. So Steve Soper reckoned that he and local hero JJ Leto would have to start behind the Mercedes. But JJ, spurred on by the crowd, made a final effort in the McLaren BMW. He was right on the limit through the traffic, and it was good enough for pole position. The crowd were absolutely delighted. JJ, of course, is a local boy, and Steve Soper could hardly believe it. This was the best possible news if they were to maintain their championship lead. And JJ celebrated in time-honoured fashion with a couple of donuts. With a rolling start as usual, the Panoz team is giving this one a miss. Fastest GT2 car here is the Porsche of Jean-Pierre Jarier. As they come up, the lights go green, and at the front it's Leto moving away from the Mercedes of Nannini. And they have yellow flags at the first corner to ensure there's no early accident. Then the flags are green before the hairpin. Leto leads, Nannini is second. In third place, it's the other Mercedes of Alexander Wurz. Then the McLarens follow. A few disagreements about the line to take on that first hairpin from the midfield, but Leto now looking very strong. We're riding now with Boldrini's Lotus, and he leaves his braking too late, goes straight on down the escape road, trying to chase Pescatore's Porsche. That didn't do him any good at all this early in the race, but at the front, it's Leto leading. It's Nannini second. Leto's car looking so low over the bumps of this extremely rough and twisty circuit. The Mercedes chasing him, Nannini in second place. We look down on the extraordinary Docklands layout of this street circuit between its temporary concrete walls that are put up just for the race. And JJ Leto, who raced here last year in ITC, really, as the local hero, he knows this circuit in his sleep, and he's putting his local knowledge to the best possible use. He crosses the start-finish line, then the two Mercedes, Nannini ahead of Wurz, then it's Peter Cox in fourth place, then the two Gulf McLarens, Thomas Björ ahead of Andrew Gilbert-Scott, then in this race. But the McLaren's looking very, very strong indeed, and it's significant that on this circuit with its threatening concrete walls, all the GT drivers are being somewhat more circumspect in this long race as we look down at the tortuous track, being more circumspect than were the Formula 3000 drivers in their race earlier on. And the leader's already up with the back markers. That's the Morgan, Charlie Morgan, grandson of the founder of the Morgan Company, already about to be lapped by JJ Leto. The V8 Rover-based Morgan lapped about 18 seconds a lap slower than the McLarens in qualifying, but of course a Morgan's a lot cheaper than a McLaren. And you can see the McLaren coming up now, blasts past the Morgan and goes on its way, and the back markers are going to be quite a problem in this race because the circuit is narrow. As you heard JJ Leto saying earlier, if you get offline you can get into trouble. The Mercedes pit watching Alexander Wurz, who's coming up now to lap the slowing McLaren of Thomas Björ. The Mercedes weaving as Wurz gets the power down, and Björ getting the blue flag, but he doesn't seem to be in much of a hurry to get out of the way of the Mercedes, and I think Wurz is getting a little bit impatient. Now he's going down the inside of Thomas Björ. Oh, and Björ shuts the door, and they collide. The Mercedes is at the barrier. The Mercedes is off, and Björ has spun, and Alexander Wurz's Mercedes is buried in the barrier. We've got the safety car out, and that was a shameful incident because Björ was being lapped. The Mercedes has come in, the bodywork is badly damaged. It looks as though perhaps it may only be bodywork that is damaged, but that's going to delay Alexander Wurz's car. We're riding in a replay with Thomas Björ. His mirrors are full of the Mercedes, and as he turns in, there's a collision there. The McLaren spins backwards, and through the windscreen you see the Mercedes buried in the barriers as Thomas Björ tries to find a gear and tries to find a gap behind. And that's the Nannini Mercedes. It's slowed right down. It's chugging through the slower corners. It's dropped down to third place. It doesn't seem to have any revs in the slower parts of the course. I wonder if there's a gearbox problem with that car. And the fourth place battle between Björ and Kelleners is catching it up. And all that means the FIA BMW entered McLarens are now first and second. JJ Lehto still leading, of course. Peter Cox is now in second place. The Mercedes is third. It seems to be going all right down the straights, but it's terribly slow through the corners. It's still holding on to third place, but the Lotus in fourth and the Porsche in fifth are right up there with it now. Luca Badoa stalking his prey with this nimble little Lotus, and he goes by. The Badoa Lotus squeezes past. We've now got a Lotus in third place for the first time in the FIA GT Championship, and the Kellerner's Ortelli Porsche goes by as well. The Mercedes pushed down now to fifth place, and I would think we can expect a pit stop for Alessandro Nannini pretty soon. He's not going to be a JJ Lehto laps yet another Porsche. As Peter Cox, you can see that central driving position in the McLaren, closes up. He too sneaks past that Porsche under braking for the hairpin, and the co-drivers, Roberto Ravaglia for the second-placed car, Steve Soper for the leading car, are both down here in front of me in the pits, waiting to take over, and a real battle on for the lead between these two. It's a 3-hour race, remember, as we approach the halfway point. There's absolutely nothing to choose between these two leading McLarens. They have walked away from all of the rest of the race, but we've got a real battle for the lead here. Look at how hard JJ Lehto is trying, locking up his wheels as ever closer gets Peter Cox. Remember, the Dutchman and Roberto Ravaglia won the very wet race in Silverstone a couple of weeks ago. So it's championship points at stake here. Lehto and Soper leads, and it's Lehto. Lehto into the pits now. They get the door open, the fuel hose goes on. Lehto rolls out of the cockpit instantly. Steve Soper slides into that awkward central seat, and Lehto will probably help him with his seat belts, because it's very difficult to strap yourself into these cars on your own. They're cleaning the windscreen now. The seconds are ticking away, and of course Peter Cox in the sister car has now gone ahead into the lead, but we wonder for how long, because it too will need to stop for fuel and a tyre change any moment. And away goes Steve Soper. Both the FIA McLaren BMWs have had their pit stops, but their battle is still joined at the front of the race. And Britain's Steve Soper leads here in Helsinki. Roberto Ravaglia in the Peter Cox car is in second place. Third now is the little Lotus of Schiattarella and Luca Badoa. Fourth, the GT1 Porsche of Ralph Kellerner's, now driven by Stefan Ortelli. And fifth, the Gulf McLaren of Pierre-Henri Raffanel and Andrew Gilbert-Scott. Both the Mercedes are still running. They've done a gearbox change on the Nannini car, and the Wurz-Schneider car is stalling up after it. Still the two FIA cars, the two FIA BMW entered McLarens are running pretty close in the front. They've just lapped John Nielsen's McLaren, and they're now getting into a lot of back markers. Look at this traffic. Porsches everywhere you look, and Soper boxed in behind the 8th place Pierluigi Martini GT1 Porsche. That's the red one. They're passing a Marcos, but the two McLarens are now absolutely nose to tail. This is the battle for the lead here at Helsinki, right in among the traffic. Mauro Baldi heading the queue in his GT1 Porsche, but the red GT1 Porsche, the Pierluigi Martini car, is definitely holding up the two McLarens, and I think now that Roberto Ravaglia is going to try and see if he can elbow his way to the front. The blue flags are waving. That means you've got a faster car behind you, as if they didn't know. There's Mauro Baldi at the front of the queue, several GT2 Porsches. The red GT1 Porsche is Pierluigi Martini, and still the McLarens are stuck in there. Still the McLarens are stuck in there. John Nielsen, a lap down, has a grandstand view in the orange and blue Gulf McLaren, and now Pierluigi Martini doesn't want to let the McLaren behind in front of him, because he's trying to get through the traffic in front of him. This is classic endurance racing, where there is often a big speed differential between the different cars in the different classes, and when you're lapping slower cars, particularly on a circuit as tight as this, it can become a real problem, particularly if you're battling for the lead, because Soper now has Ravaglia almost alongside him as they try to elbow their way past these slower cars in front. now they've got alongside, and shut inside is Soper, and Ravaglia's got by. Ravaglia used the traffic absolutely perfectly there, boxed in Steve Soper, and we've had a change of lead. It's now Roberto Ravaglia who's taken the lead from Steve Soper. Steve Soper, off goes one of the Lotuses. One of the Lotuses and the Raphael McLaren are stationary at the hairpin. That is the Badoa Lotus. Luca Badoa gets out of the car. Raphael's car is also stationary as the rest of the field squeeze by. And now Raphael finds reverse gear, and Raphael rejoins as Badoa, absolutely furious, can only stand and watch. Luca Badoa out. And here's a replay with Badoa down the inside. Raphael shuts the door, pushes him into the wall. The McLaren spins round. The Mercedes on the outside of Bernd Schneider cannot avoid the Lotus, which comes into the right of him. The Mercedes gets away with it, but the Lotus is well and truly mangled. And in fact, the marshals here in Helsinki are trying to manhandle that car out of the way. The under tray is adrift underneath it, as well as the front bodywork adrift there, pit lane, and it's slowing. That is the Roberto Ravaglia McLaren suddenly slowing, and back into the lead now goes Steve Soper. Steve Soper retakes the lead, and the Roberto Ravaglia McLaren is in trouble. It's creeping towards the pit lane now. Some sort of mechanical problem by the look of things. It comes down into the pit lane. Peter Cox's prayers are all in vain, and Steve Soper is back in the lead. Now, Ravaglia has been able to bring that car in under its own steam, at least. The BMW McLaren mechanics are all ready. Now, in goes the airline for the air jacks. Up off the ground goes the car on its inbuilt jacks. They take the engine cover off. They're obviously going to work on that car and see how bad the problem is, see if they can get it back into the race. But meanwhile, Steve Soper now has a huge lead over the new second-placed car, the Kellner's Ortelli GT1 Porsche. Now, JJ Leto, the local hero, the victory which he has been helped to get by that very consistent and experienced English driver, Steve Soper, is now within sight. And there the checkered flag is ready. The mechanics run across, and there the checkered flag waves, and Steve Soper takes the win. JJ Leto cheers him home. It's a win in Helsinki for JJ Leto and Steve Soper in the McLaren BMW from the German Schnitzer FIA team.
Of course. And good to see Porsche making progress now, second place for them. But disappointment again for Andrew Gilbert-Scott, fourth place. He must wonder what he's got to do to get on that podium. With 3 races gone, this is the drivers' table, and you have to search hard for anything other than McLaren's. Mercedes stars Bernd Schneider and Alex Wurz are down in 5th with 6 points.
Yes, the three-pointed star is 1, 3 and 4 on the grid. Marcel Thiemens partners Alessandro Nannini in the number 10 car, while the experienced Roberto Moreno's been drafted in to share the pole position car of Bernd Schneider. Bernd has qualified 0.03 of a second quicker than JJ Leto in the championship-leading BMW McLaren. JJ and Steve Soper won from pole last time out, but here in Germany, Steve knows they've a real fight on their hands with those 3 Mercedes.
They've been testing, they've had a few weeks. We've been at Le Mans and we haven't been testing, and I feel that they've made some ground on us. I hope they haven't, but I feel they have made some good ground, and they're probably more reliable now.
This is really a battle of manufacturers. BMW versus Mercedes versus Porsche. We're on the new, shorter Nürburgring, of course, using very little of the old 14.5-mile ring, but it's a daunting track nevertheless. A 4-hour race, it's overcast, we've got a slight threat of rain, and now they're on the rolling lap. The top GT2 qualifier is the Viper of Olivier Beretta and Philippe Gache. The Justin Bellmark Duez Viper qualified 3rd in that class. We've got 16 911 GT2 Porsches here on their home ground, but as they come down to the start-finish line, it's a clear start. Mercedes and McLaren 5 abreast as they go down into the first corner. Bernd Schneider is nosing ahead. There they are, a great phalanx down into the first corner. Schneider on the right, Nannini on the left, and it's Schneider who's got through first. Schneider leads. Where's JJ Leto? He's in about 4th place. I think we've got Mercedes 1, 2, 3. The 3 Mercedes have engulfed the 2 white McLarens. It's Schneider then it's Nannini, then it's Klaus Ludwig. JJ Leto is in 4th place. The other, Peter Cox, white McLaren, is 5th. Then we've got one of the Gulf McLarens, the rest of the cars funneling around the circuit. And Schneider is indeed ahead. Alessandro Nannini locking up a brake, a little puff of rubber smoke. JJ Leto in 4th place trying to fight back. Cox, and it's here at the start-finish line, standing up to see 3 silver Mercedes. 1, 2, 3, leading. It's Schneider from Nannini, from Ludwig. Then all the McLarens, JJ Leto and Peter Cox in the 2 white Schnitzer cars. Then it's Jean-Marc Gounon in the pale blue and orange of the Gulf colours. And then Jan Lammers in the little yellow Lotus. Here still the battle of the McLarens. Still it's Peter Cox in 5th place. Still it's Jean-Marc Gounon in 6th place. They battle on despite the traffic. There's a lot of rubber on this circuit already now. It's getting more slippery. Headlights ablaze. These 2 McLarens. And Gounon has a little look at the inside. Gounon is going down the inside. He must get through. He doesn't. Or does he? Still side by side. The next corner is a right-hander. That allows Cox just to ease away. The Chamberlain entered Viper, desperately trying to keep out of the way of these 2 battling McLarens. You'd think this was a 10-lap club race. That's one of the Panoz cars in the pits. They're topping up. What are they doing? The brake fluid, I think that must be. The brake master cylinder. Now, look, it's Peter Cox just fighting off. The Jean-Marc Gounon car goes on the inside. They're side by side, and Jean-Marc Gounon's through. Jean-Marc Gounon forces his way onto that final right-hander and gets through and immediately pulls away from Peter Cox. We have a new 5th man, Jean-Marc Gounon. Tremendous effort. One McLaren passes another. And there's one McLaren off the road. That's Andrew Gilbert-Scott. Andrew Gilbert-Scott parking his Gulf McLaren. Can't see what the problem is. Has there been an accident? Has there been contact? We're going to see a replay. Over the curbs goes the McLaren, and Klaus, that Lotus, hits it very hard. The Lotus and the McLaren, I suspect, are both now going to be out of the race. The Lotus is Luca Bedoa's, and yes, that is a very sorry sight. Luca Bedoa out of the race, Andrew Gilbert-Scott out of the race, and Hans Stuck in trouble. That's the Hans Stuck Porsche GT1, moving very slowly indeed as the Nannini Mercedes comes in for a routine stop. There's our replay. It's a Mercedes. It's the 3rd place Mercedes. Bernd Maylander in the Klaus Ludwig car, and he's off for the chicane. The car is spinning in the air across the gravel, and it's in the barriers. Oh, a big accident for Bernd Maylander. That's the 3rd place Mercedes out of the race. The Mercedes mechanics get the news. It's not going to be a Mercedes 1, 2, 3 today. Whatever happens, it's still Mercedes 1, 2. Here's Bernd Schneider through the back markers. Schneider off. Schneider elbowed onto the grass there by one of the GT2 Porsches. These 2 McLarens are still waging war over 3rd place. The white Schnitzer car of JJ Leto, the championship leader. The blue and orange Gulf car of Jean-Marc Gounon fighting over 3rd place. JJ Leto working away at the wheel. He's got one of the little Porsches to pass. He passes him going into that final corner, and he's fighting the wheel. He's spun. He spun. JJ Leto spins. I didn't see if he had a little tap from behind from Jean-Marc Gounon. Whatever happened, Leto is in the gravel. He's trying to find a gear. Gounon's gone through into 3rd place. He's found reverse gear. JJ Leto back on the circuit. JJ Leto goes. He's still 4th, but he's very unhappy. Mercedes 1 and 2, McLaren's 3 and 4. Pierre-Henri Raffanel at the wheel now is in 3rd place. There it was, just ahead of the little yellow Lotus of Jean-Denis Delatraz, and they're now fighting over that 3rd place. The Lotus has come through very well, and this is the Lotus coming into the attack. Once again, they're lapping one of those little Porsches. They go into the final corner. The McLaren moves across on the Lotus, and now it's Raffanel's turn to spin, and off into the gravel goes Jean-Denis Delatraz in the Lotus. And the Lotus's race seems to be run. But there is Jean-Marc Gounon walking away from his pit. He's going towards the BMW tent. Now, let's just have one guess as to who he's looking for. He's talking to JJ Leto. Well, that's looking like an explanation and I think an apology. And JJ Leto I think, being pretty philosophical about it. JJ Leto, the consummate professional, there's nothing he can do about it. His car is still outside, he's in the lead. This is Steve Soper, and Steve Soper is right back up on the third place McLaren. Now we've got our battle for third place yet again with Pierre-Henri Raffanel and Steve Soper now battling, and they're side by side, and Soper goes through. Steve Soper takes that third place. He came charging back. I don't think Pierre-Henri Raffanel was expecting that. I certainly wasn't. Soper seemed to come from almost nowhere, and he's put that car back into third place, the third place it had before it was booted up the back by Jean-Marc Gounon, spinning JJ Leto off. JJ Leto got the car going, he handed over to Steve Soper. Steve Soper is now third, and instantly Fox, the Dutchman, sharing this car with the Italian Roberto Ravaglia, both of them very experienced long-distance drivers, putting the pressure on Raffanel. It's interesting that Raffanel doesn't seem to be as quick as Jean-Marc Gounon, even if he also can say that he's not quite as wild. Now he's looking at the inside. Peter Cox under braking for the chicane, and he spins! They've both spun. Both the McLarens have spun. A great spurt of mud from the rear wheels of Peter Cox's car as he gets going, and the other one that's got going as well. Both those McLarens restart. They've both had a spin, and they've both restarted. That's how hard these cars are fighting. It may be a 4-hour endurance race, but every inch of this battle at Nürburgring is a still the McLarens battle on. Peter Cox, Roberto Ravaglia, Pierre-Henri Raffanel, Jean-Marc Gounon. These two McLarens have fought over fourth place, it seems, for the whole of the last 4 hours. And Pierre-Henri Raffanel's going to have another go at Ravaglia as they come into this final corner. The battle's going on between them. There's the yellow McLaren of Chris Goodwin, which is still pressing on just ahead of our leader as he starts his final lap. Bernd Schneider is just one lap away from victory at last for the Mercedes CLK. They've got the beer ready, but the team say no, let's start celebrating. There's still one lap to go as Bernd Schneider has to work his way through the tired traffic on a weary and slippery and rubber-strewn road. It's not over yet, but the checkered flag is not far away. He's in the last right-hander. He's on the final start-finish straight. The checkered flag is ready. Mercedes-Benz have won a GT race at last. Mercedes are first and second. And what about this McLaren battle? Steve Soper takes third place, and it's Roberto Ravaglia who is fourth. There's Justin Bell. He gets second place in GT2. He'll be happy about that with the Viper. And now they're bringing the beer out in the Mercedes pit. There it is. The mechanics are now celebrating. And for the first time, McLaren BMW have been beaten.
Mercedes was really quick, you know. I mean, we didn't really have chance. They have much more power than we have. We saw it already on the start, you know, that we couldn't really follow them at all. And it seems to be that they can really do good lap times during the race, and we are flat out all the time. So it's third is the best we can do at the moment, you know. And we just have to keep on going and trying to, you know, finish in the podium all the time so we can get the points.
JJ not too happy after that impressive 1-2 for Mercedes. Ravaglia held off Raffanel for fourth. And once again, those Parabolica boys, still no points for Panoz, but the gap is closing at the top of the Drivers' Championship. Bernd Schneider now just 12 points behind the two Works BMW drivers. And this is how the GT2 Drivers' Championship looks. Hürtgen, Eichmann and Amarin extend their lead after their win with Britain's Justin Bell.
Star Ralf Schumacher has a guest drive to learn the track ahead of the Belgian Grand Prix.
How different is it racing a GT car to Formula One?
Well, it's a huge difference. To be honest, the cars are really quick, but because of the braking and because of the aerodynamics, which are not like a Formula One car, it's quite difficult to handle them.
Have you been surprised at all by the handling of a GT car?
Well, I was surprised by the speed, and I was surprised when I first time tried to brake the car down. That needs obviously double or twice as long, at least, than the Formula One car.
The powerful Mercedes were expected to dominate on this high-speed track, even if Bernd Schneider did have a few problems getting out of the tight hairpin exit of the pits. He needed help from his mechanics to get round, which didn't impress the young F1 guns, Ralf Schumacher and Alex Wurz, who were watching from the Mercedes pit. But then in the final moments of qualifying, out went Leto, and the brilliant Finn slipped in a storming lap in the McLaren BMW and snatched another pole position from the Mercedes, to the renewed delight of team boss Charlie Lamb and British teammate Steve Soper. So the grid going out now on its rolling lap. It's dry, but the weather does look a bit threatening. Leto's McLaren on pole as they come down the hill to the start line. Then the three Mercedes of Nannini, Schneider and Ludwig. Then the McLarens of Gounod and Cox. The race is on as they go over the start-finish line. Is it Mercedes or McLaren as they go down to the bottom of the hill? They're side by side. It's a Mercedes. It's Nannini who has the lead. Nannini leads, but it's Leto in second place. Then the other two Mercedes following on. I think that is the Ludwig car that is third. It's Schneider who is fourth. Then come a further phalanx of McLaren, so they're going back up the hill once more. Look at Leto trying to get alongside the Mercedes as they're going to the right-hander at the top of the hill. He can't, and it's Nannini who leads through the twists at the top of the hill, and side by side the Porsche of Boutsen it was, and one of the Gulf McLarens absolutely wheel to wheel there. We're riding now with the Core Oyser Marcos, and there's been an accident. The yellow flags are waving. Core Oyser almost hits the back of one of the Vipers. There's smoke all over the road. That's one of the Gulf McLarens, and another one. Two of the Gulf McLarens going slowly, and there's been some sort of accident. We didn't see how it started, but certainly two of the Gulf McLarens are involved, and meanwhile, Mercedes, McLaren, Mercedes, Mercedes, McLaren, that is the top five, with a Porsche in sixth place. Thierry Boutsen obviously got away with whatever maneuver he was having with the Jean-Marc Gounod Gulf McLaren, and JJ Leto flying the BMW McLaren flag between these two superbly sleek-looking V12 Mercedes CLK coupes. They're coming down the hill to the end of the new section of this wonderful Spa road circuit, and now they rejoin there, the old public road, and they start the long climb through two sweeping flat-out left-handers. They're doing about 165, nudging 170 miles an hour. They line up, dab the brakes for the first left-hander, but the second one really is flat. And then they curve right and come to the bus stop chicane. It's just like a bus stop. Left, right, right and left again. Still Nannini the leader for Mercedes. Leto second for McLaren. Ludwig and Schneider third and fourth for Mercedes. Cox fifth for McLaren. And Thierry Boutsen moving up in the Porsche. He's passed Peter Cox's McLaren. Now he passes Klaus Ludwig's Mercedes also. So Boutsen really charging. That's a Jeep on the track. For heaven's sake, they're still clearing up the debris from that McLaren accident, but it is completely inexcusable to have a Jeep or a fire engine actually on the racing line. And why there wasn't an accident then of horrendous proportions. Let's see it again. Look at that leading Mercedes of Nannini having to drive round, as does JJ Leto, drive round that Jeep. Right in the middle of the corner. Now we're riding with Bernd Schneider. He's come up to third place. He's now on JJ Leto's tail as they go down the hill into the last source hairpin, and through he goes. Leto trying to fight back on a tighter line, but Schneider has done it. Mercedes are 1 and 2. JJ Leto pushed back to third place. Nannini the leader, Schneider in second place, and in third place now the McLaren of JJ Leto, and Thierry Boutsen looking good in fourth place. They're already about to lap that gallant little blue Mercedes up at the top of the hill once more. Oh, a twitch from Nannini. Nannini's off! Nannini spins! Nannini goes right through 360 degrees. He throws away his lead. Nannini has spun off on the damp and treacherous surface, and while he was doing so, Bernd Schneider had to come off the power to avoid hitting his teammate, and we've got a McLaren back in the lead. JJ Leto leading now, and JJ Leto with Schneider on his tail comes up to lap three slower cars, two of those Mustangs, Peter Owen and Thomas Erdos. They're there battling with a 911 Porsche, and now Schneider is poised to get that lead back from JJ Leto. Porsche third, Mercedes fourth, Mercedes fifth, and Peter Cox's McLaren sixth. Now we're on board with Schneider. He's got Peter Owen's Mustang in front of him. Mustang moves across to the right. Mercedes goes by. Up the hill, Mercedes passes Porsche. But still that McLaren is leading. In the pits, we've got the Porsche GT1, the third place car of Thierry Boutsen. He's in bad trouble. And we've got a new leader once more. Schneider has the Mercedes back in the lead ahead of the McLaren. What a fantastic motor race this is, with a battle going on for the lead as though it were a 10-lap club race instead of a 4-hour endurance race. Bernd Schneider leads, the championship leader, JJ Leto in second place. Once more, there is one of the slower GT2 Porsches to lap. It gets out of the way. The Mercedes goes by. The McLaren isn't by it yet. Now the McLaren goes by as they come down towards that tight right-hander. And that is the other GT1 Porsche. That's Yannick Dalmas's car. And that's smoking and steaming a bit. And that's Ralf Schumacher. It's really raining here. A lot of the cars coming in for fresh tyres. There's the leading Mercedes. Now, Schneider in. Alex Wurz opens the door for him. Schneider rolls out. That's the wet weather tyre ready to go on that car. We've now got the Klaus Ludwig third place Mercedes coming in. Ralf Schumacher's ready for that. But let's hear from leader Bernd Schneider.
I'm really happy to be back at the pit and give the car to Alexander. Now we put the rain tires on. I think it's only a shower. I think after an hour we'll be dry again. At that time we were lucky because it was a bland pit stop.
Here's Peter Cox coming down the pit lane, and look at that Mercedes of Marcel Thiemann come out, and how those cars don't collide I will never know. Marcel Thiemann in the Mercedes almost collecting Peter Cox, but Peter Cox's teammate JJ Leto is back in the lead. His pit stop was quicker than the Mercedes and he's absolutely storming through the rain. He's got stuck at the moment behind Christophe Bouchou's GT1 Porsche, which he's trying to lap. But JJ Leto in the rain is absolutely mighty. He's lapping quicker than anybody else, and he has... Oh, Bouchou spins! Bouchou spins right in front of the leader and back across in front of him. Oh dear. Steve Soper didn't like the look of that, and nor did I. But JJ Leto managed to miss the spinning Porsche and retains the lead, and here's a Mercedes in trouble. This is Marcel Thiemann back in the pits. In fact, he's getting out of the car, and I think they're working on the transmission of that car. Marcel Thiemann sharing the Mercedes that Alessandro Nannini led the race in. And now here's another spinner as the track starts to dry. That's the Spinelli Collins Waddell GT2 Porsche going sideways and backwards across the grass. Oh, crunching down into the La Source hairpin, lapping the Claudia Hurtgen GT2 Porsche on the brakes. Bang! Bang! Well, he gets going again, and it's his teammate JJ Leto who still leads here at Spa for McLaren, but Mercedes are a threatening second, and there's still a long way to go. To Spa, there's the Peter Cox McLaren with its damage at the front when it hit that slower Porsche, but Steve Soper is in the pits waiting for JJ Leto to bring in the leading McLaren. JJ Leto out of the car. Steve Soper clambers in with rather more difficulty than Leto got out as we ride once more with Bernd Schneider. Schneider coming up to lap the Parabolica McLaren in the second place Mercedes, and Schneider is chopping great lumps out of Steve Soper's lead. Schneider wants a Mercedes victory. They won a fortnight ago at the Nürburgring, and Schneider wants some more championship points, and Schneider is absolutely flying. Steve Soper, apparently some sort of problem with the leading McLaren. We don't know what. We can only see they're going to try and get them back into the race. There's Charlie Lamb talking to JJ Leto. What is the problem with the leading car? And it's going to come in. They're going to bring in Steve Soper, and they've got some tools ready. What is the problem with the leader? Still Schneider in second place. Meanwhile, the Viper is about to rejoin. They've got four wheels on that wagon, and back goes the Beretta Gash Viper to race on. And now Soper's car in the pits. They're looking at the back as they refuel it. Steve Soper's still in the cockpit, but they're trying to do something to the underneath of that car. Whatever it is, that must be what has been slowing still leads. But Bernd Schneider, we're riding with him now as he comes up to lap Thierry Boutsen, who's now taken over that GT1 Porsche, riding over the curbs. Schneider is absolutely flying. Schneider is the fastest man on the track. Soper now has a McLaren which seems to be handling better, but still Schneider is nibbling away at that lead as he laps Boutsen going into the La Source hairpin. Soper first, McLaren. Schneider second, Mercedes. Ralf Schumacher third, Mercedes. Roberto Ravaglia fourth place, Schlitz and McLaren have now been passed by Thierry Boutsen. Thierry Boutsen brings the Porsche up to third place. Steve Soper in the lead, now coming up to lap Gary Ailes in the yellow Parabolica McLaren. And those Parabolica boys have done a great job. They're in sixth place. They're in the sure that Gary Ailes will get out of the way. He knows that Steve Soper, there's a blue flag anyway that tells him get out of the way. There's a faster car coming up behind, and Soper slots neatly by at the hairpin, accelerates away down the hill. There is no doubt a faithful Soper fan hoping that he can keep this lead going. Well, this lead has come down from half a minute to about 16 seconds now as Soper noses into the final lap here at Spa. He's kept that lead just enough, and although Schneider has driven his heart out, we've had the fastest lap from Schneider, but still he leads, does Soper, and off goes the Marcos, the Dutch Marcos of Cor Oyser. Can he keep it going on this final lap? Can he nose it out of the gravel? Well, on this final lap, there is our leader. The McLaren with the red mirrors screams on its way into the final curves that will take it back up the hill of this magnificent Spa circuit and on towards the bus stop for the final time. Left, then right again, and then left again. On past the pits, the checkered flag is the other side of the hairpin, but as he passes the pits for the last time, JJ Leto is waiting for him. Charlie Lamb is waiting for him. They cheer him on. He has one corner left to go, one final hairpin. A third GT victory of 1997 for Steve Soper and JJ Leto. There's Justin Bell cheering home Mark Duez, who wins GT2 for Viper.
So Steve Soper and JJ Leto take their third win of the year from Bernd Schneider and Alex Wurz.
I sort of was driving as quick as I could, trying to keep the distance and the gap, because I'm very aware that once they have you in sight, and then, you know, it's like the prey. It's like the, you know, eagle coming down on its prey. And I wanted to keep a gap that they couldn't actually see me, because then I figured that we could win. But I've been around here before and had someone in sight, and within 2 laps you've got them. But it was hard work at the end. But we won, and we were desperate to win. We gained a few more points, and I'm very pleased. And I have to say that JJ in the wet did a fantastic job.
Ralf Schumacher's first taste of a championship left him disappointed, down in 5th.
I missed one corner, so I destroyed my front nose, and therefore we lost the 3rd place, so that's a bit annoying. But
So with 5 of the 11 rounds gone, Leto and Soper have extended their lead in the drivers' table. They're now 16 points ahead of Bernd Schneider. Other changes here include Porsche bringing in Scotsman Alan McNish to partner Yannick Daumas. That's in place of Hans Stuck, and they were quick in qualifying.
I think realistically we can look at a podium position. We're 5th on the grid, and at Spa, the previous race, the Porsche was very competitive in race trim, more than in qualifying trim, and I think round here we should be in a similar situation.
But it's Mercedes dominating again. They seem to get stronger at each round. The CLKs are 1, 2, 3 on the grid here at the A1 ring, led by Alessandro Nannini. Starting 4th in the BMW McLaren, championship leaders JJ Leto and Steve Soper. But Steve isn't a fan of the new track.
It's too slow, too many first and second gear corners, and I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's not demanding enough like having fast corners.
You won't mind it too much if you win, though?
No, I probably think it's a lovely circuit if we win.
3 Mercedes, Nannini, Schneider and Ludwig leading the rest of the 36-car field round on the rolling lap up to the rolling start. It's very hot, track temperatures of over 40 degrees centigrade, and this is going to be a long and hard and hot race. We're riding with Pierre-Henri Raphael in his McLaren. The race is on. We go down the start-finish straight, and those 3 Mercedes are out in front. It's Schneider. Schneider has got the lead. It's Schneider from Nannini with Ludwig in 3rd place. The rest of the field pouring through, but JJ Leto has got the McLaren up into 4th place. Then it's 3 of the Porsches, and the Gulf McLaren of Pierre-Henri Raphael, the one with the cockpit camera we were riding with a second ago, is in 8th place. There are those 2 yellow Lotuses well up behind the black Dams Panoz, but already Bernd Schneider has pulled away from his 2 teammates. Bernd Schneider already building a lead on this first lap from Nannini and Ludwig. There is Leto in 4th place, and we ride with Pierre-Henri Raphael as Daumas and Collard battle in their Porsches ahead of us. And let's ride now with Raphael in the 600 horsepower McLaren through that long left-hander. And you can see how quick the gear changes are with this sequential gear change. He just pushes the gear lever forward or back to go up and down. There, forward to go up a gear. and he's looking in his mirror, and I can tell you the reason why he's looking in his mirror is because the white BMW entered McLaren of Roberto Ravaglia is right behind him as they go through that tight right-hander onto the start-finish straight. He's looking in his mirror, and Ravaglia is up alongside. They're side by side as they go down the start-finish straight. Flat out is Raffanel, flat out is Ravaglia on the brakes now. And is Ravaglia going through? He is! Ravaglia sneaks through on the inside and accelerates away up the hill. This may be a long 4-hour race, but the battles are going on all ranks of the little GT2 Porsches, with the leading Mercedes lapping them, working its way through the traffic. Schneider, of course, still at the wheel. That's Norbert Haug in the sunglasses, the competition's boss of Mercedes, watching his team run at the front of this race here at the A1 ring in Austria. That's Gary Ayles's Parabolica McLaren. It's stationary, there's wreckage, and Mike Hesselman's running away from the Lotus, which is on fire. That Lotus is burning badly, and Gary Ayles still inside the McLaren. Now the door's opening. Gary Ayles scrambling out of the McLaren, but the Lotus well and truly ablaze. No fire marshals yet. Where are the fire marshals? We've got yellow flags, but that Lotus burning badly. Now there's a fire truck there, but that Lotus very much on fire. I wonder if this is going to call for a safety car. That's Chris Goodwin talking to David Morrison, the patron of the Parabolica team, and poor Chris Goodwin distraught to see that the Parabolica car, which is unhurt. We see it again, the McLaren spins, I think possibly because it was touched by John Nielsen's McLaren, which it was battling with, and as it spins, Hesselman's Lotus caught it. Hesselman's running away from the car, realizing that it is stranded and well on fire. Well, they've got the fire out now, but the car is still on the track, as indeed is the Parabolica McLaren, and it has brought out the safety car. So Bernd Schneider at the head of the queue that is building up behind the safety car, but it means that that lead has melted away. The safety car has parked once more. The race is on again, and still Mercedes 1, 2, 3. But as we've gone through the pit stops, it's Klaus Ludwig who is now the second Mercedes, still Bernd Schneider leading, Ludwig in second place, Alessandro Nannini is third. Behind the trio of silver arrows, JJ Leto in the McLaren, you saw him there. He's in fourth place. Then the Porsche of Bob Wallach is fifth. Roberto Ravaglia's McLaren is sixth. And in GT2, it's a Porsche leading. The Italian Stefan Ortelli leads the Vipers, but there's still a very long way to go here in Austria at the A1. And Peter Cox has gone off. Peter Cox is in the gravel. I don't know what happened there, but Peter Cox's car has come to a halt. There's a tractor going to drag it out. What a shame. It looks as though that car may be out. We're seeing a replay now. He's lapping the Riccitelli Porsche. Oh, and there's contact there. The Porsche just simply drove into the side of Peter Cox, spun him round. The Porsche goes round through the gravel, and this is Peter Cox's eye view. He comes up to lap the Porsche. The Porsche gives him lots of room and then turns in, bang, at the back. And the McLaren spins off into the gravel, and I think the Dutchman, Peter Cox, must be absolutely furious about that. A completely unnecessary accident. Now, the leader's in the pit lane. Schneider, balked by the Chamberlain Viper a little bit, in the pit lane. Schneider comes in, the leader comes in, and Alex Wurz is standing, that tall figure, waiting to get in. Out gets Schneider, and now, somehow, sliding into that cockpit goes Alex Wurz. Alex Wurz is in there, and what are we seeing now? We're seeing another Lotus on fire. That's the Sandy Grau Kurt Tim Lotus. It's a slow-motion replay. We see the driver rolling out of the cockpit and onto the grass as the marshals get there with their fire extinguishers. Nobody hurt, happily, but another Lotus is out of the race as the yellow flags wave. And we've got the leader in the pits. The leader in the pits, and he shouldn't be in the pits. This is an unscheduled pit stop for the leading Schneider Alex Wurz Mercedes. And that's good news for this man. The number 8 McLaren, Steve Soper at the wheel, goes up into second place. The Klaus Ludwig Bernd Maylander Mercedes now leads. The Steve Soper JJ Leto McLaren up to second. And in third place now, the Marcel Thiemann Alessandro Nannini Mercedes. That car still stationary in the pits. This is a delay for Bernd Schneider. What will the Mercedes-Benz tactics be now?
So maybe I jumped on another car because now Klaus Ludwig is leading, and
I have to do some points, and if that car is still lead in the end, maybe I'll jump in that one.
Yes, the rules in the GT Championship allow a driver, if his car stops, to get into another car and still score points with that car's final position, as long as he drives it for at least an hour. Well, it's still Mercedes leading. Klaus Ludwig, the red-mirrored car, the Klaus Ludwig Bernd Maylander car, is in the lead. The McLaren of Steve Soper and JJ Leto in second place, keeping about the same gap back to it, not catching but not losing the now leading Mercedes. And we wait to see whether Mercedes will bring that car in and put their Drivers' Championship challenger, Bernd Schneider, in the car. Of course, JJ Leto and Steve Soper hope they won't, because it's JJ Leto and Steve Soper who currently lead the championship. There's another McLaren off, another Garth McLaren off. That's Thomas Boucher, who seems to have spun. He gets the car back onto the track, and out gets Klaus Ludwig, and indeed in gets, if he can clamber aboard, now he manages to do it. They've had to change the seat because they're different sizes. That is Bernd Schneider. Bernd Schneider gets into the leading car. That's the Steve Soper McLaren, which has come in early. I gather a rear wheel was loose, and that brought Steve in earlier than he should have come in, and has come to an end. Now, Steve Soper in third place overall. That's the Wolek Boots and Porsche in sixth place that Steve is lapping in the McLaren. Two Mercedes ahead of him, and there's the Mercedes of Alexander Wurz, which is storming up through the field. He's about to lap Emmanuel Collard's GT1 Porsche, lining up to do so, weaving under braking, but the car that Wurz is really interested in is the blue and orange McLaren ahead of him, because that is the Olofsson-Rafanel car in fourth place. Wurz, after that earlier delay, is running fifth, but there's a Mercedes going slow. That was a shot, very briefly, of that's the second place Mercedes, and it is coming to a halt. And that's going to allow Steve Soper to take the white McLaren, the Schnitzer BMW McLaren, up into second place. I can see him from here. He's managed to get the car underway again, but it's going very, very slowly. Still, of course, the Schneider-Ludwig Maylander car leads, and a further lap back, this battle between Wurz's Mercedes and Olofsson's McLaren goes on. Olofsson just ahead. They've got a slower GT2 Porsche ahead of them, and now Wurz charges up the inside. Is the GT2 Porsche in the way? No, the Mercedes goes between the two of them, and Olofsson has to give best. Wurz is fourth, and Olofsson down to fifth. Worried faces in the Mercedes pit, but now we've got Steve Soper in the pit lane. We're not due to have a pit stop from him. He's in second place. Steve Soper in the dying moments of this race. Steve Soper is in the pits, and they're refueling the car. It's a last-minute splash and dash pit stop, and while they're there, Marcel Thiemann has taken the faltering Mercedes-Benz, which seems now to be firing on all cylinders, back into second place. Steve Soper rejoins after that brief pit stop, but it was enough to drop him back now into third place. The Alessandro Nannini Marcel Thiemann Mercedes is back up to second, and while all this drama is going on, still at the front of the field, Bernd Schneider in the Klaus Ludwig Bernd Maylander car. Norbert Haug and the Mercedes team don't want to celebrate yet, but this is the final lap, and Bernd Schneider has 10 lovely championship points waiting for him and for the Mercedes team as he comes over the brow into the final double right-hander. The battle-stained Mercedes CLK Coupe can now see the checkered flag. Bernd Schneider accelerates onto the start-finish straight. The checkered flag waves. Mercedes-Benz celebrate as they win in Austria. 1 and 2 for Mercedes, despite the last-minute dramas for the Nannini Thiemann car. Soper and Leto are on the podium again, but Schneider used 2 cars to win this race. Legal, but controversial.
He was in trouble with his car, and he did an outstanding job today, and I think he deserves the 10 points. He was definitely the #1 driver in the field, and he did a fantastic job.
So, plenty for Mercedes to celebrate then. First, second and fourth place, here's the confirmation. And Leto and Soper again on the podium for BMW. McNish and Damas, they came home an excellent 7th in their Porsche. And this is how the GT1 Drivers' Championship is affected. The McLaren duo Leto and Soper now just 10 points ahead of Mercedes' Bernd Schneider.
The magnificent Suzuka circuit is fast and demanding, rivaling Spa in some of its high-speed corners. And this race is the longest of the year, 6 hours, in weather that has turned out hot and humid. We've had drama already for the Gulf McLaren team. John Nielsen, on the left, has had a huge accident. His car is wrecked, and it's going to make the trip home to England in a box. So John will switch to the Andrew Gilbert-Scott, Jeff Lees McLaren.
Another win.
Mercedes have pole and fill 3 of the first 4 grid positions. But for the first time, there's a Porsche on the front row, the Yannick Dalmas-Alan McNish car. Championship leader JJ Leto is on row 3 with the impressive Panoz of David Brabham. This is Jeff Lees, and in the foreground, Pierre-Henri Raffanel. Their 2 McLarens are on row 4. Over 70,000 spectators, and it really is hot and humid here at Suzuka. The temperature well into the 90s as the field come round to the rolling start. A 2x2 grid, but as they come into this tight final chicane, they have to break up into single file. It's that narrow. Pole position man Klaus Ludwig in the silver Mercedes with the white Porsche alongside that Yannick Dalmas. Then Schneider and Nannini in the other 2 Mercedes. Leto in the white McLaren. Brabham in that wicked-looking front-engine Panoz. They come now down. The red light over the start-finish line goes to green. Now the race is on, and Ludwig gets the lead, but he's being challenged on the outside by teammate Schneider, who's alongside the white Porsche, as we ride now with Jeff Lees in the McLaren. Ahead of him, the Panoz on the brakes for that tight first curve, almost a hairpin, and then on the power again through the sweeping S curve. And it's Ludwig pulling away from Dalmas. Schneider and Nannini are 3rd and 4th. Then it's JJ Leto, the championship leader in the white McLaren, ahead of David Brabham going well in the Panoz. Then the 2 Gulf McLarens, the blue and orange cars. Jeff Lees just ahead of Pierre-Henri Raffanel. In 9th place, the pink car. That is another McLaren, the privately entered Japanese entry. Eric Bernard is 10th in the Dams Panoz as they go sweeping down towards the tight hairpin under the bridge, which takes them underneath this figure-of-8 circuit, underneath the back straight, now down to the hairpin. Ludwig goes a little bit wide, misses the apex. Much tighter is the 2nd place Porsche. Bernd Schneider in 3rd place, pushing up behind the Porsche, trying the outside as they go up the sweeping right-hander away from the hairpin. Mercedes in 4th place, that's Nannini. And the Lotus, the Thai Lotus, has been hit at the hairpin. Jérôme Poliquin, the French driver, he is halted across the curbs. I can't see from here who hit him, but there's a car on fire. There's a car going round well alight as we ride with Justin Bell in the Viper, and that car ahead of him on his right is well on fire. It's one of the Saab Toyotas. It's Tatsuya Tanigawa trying to get back to the pits, but that car is well aflame, and I think he ought to stop. He's not stopping, he's driving on. The car is fully on fire at the back. He's driving on to try and get back to the pits, but he's being very, very unwise indeed. He's got to stop, surely. Perhaps he's looking for a fire marshal. The rest of the field going by. He's on the grass now. He's going to set fire to the grass. The car is fully on fire. The marshals are looking for their fire extinguishers. Now at last they've got them, and he's still inside the car. The car now, black smoke as they get the fire extinguisher onto that car. Now the fire is getting, I think, under control. Yes, the fire marshal's working on it. Amazingly, one of the fire marshals has a T-shirt on, which is somewhat unwise. The Taiwanese Lotus has made it back to the pit. And meanwhile, we've got Mercedes 1 and 2. Bernd Schneider has got past the Yannick Dalmas Porsche and is immediately back onto the tail of his teammate Klaus Ludwig, who leads. Ludwig 1, Schneider 2. There is the Porsche in 3rd place, Yannick Dalmas, and he's under pressure from the 3rd Mercedes in 4th place. That's Alessandro Nannini. And Nannini challenging now. Nannini looking at the outside as they come away from the chicane onto the start-finish straight. He's in front. He noses ahead. It's Mercedes 1, 2, 3 already here in Japan. Porsche 4 with Yannick Dalmas down in 4th. 4th place. Then it's the McLaren of championship leader JJ Leto 5th. The BMW guys for some advice, no doubt. And we've got a new leader. Yellow mirrors ahead of red mirrors. Bernd Schneider, the king of the Mercedes GT team. Their current bet for the World Championship has now gone slingshotting by Klaus Ludwig. And we've got fire in the pits. That's the French entered Panoz, and the fire, in fact, seems to be behind the car. I think the refueling rig has caught fire. Eric Bernard in the crash helmet out of the car. That's the driver. He's safe and well. And they've now got the fire extinguishers there as we see the Dalmas Porsche spin off. So disaster has been averted in the pits. The routines come a long way to have all that trouble. Now that's the Hans Stuck Porsche, the Hans Stuck GT1 Porsche, now up to 9th place, ahead of Perry McCarthy in the Panoz. And we watch the other Saab Toyota, getting it absolutely wrong, backwards off on that long left-hander, does a complete 360 degrees, gets back onto the circuit once more. But look at the dust and the gravel that pursues that car. Kageyama and Tanaka. And as Alessandro Nannini watches in the pits, his Mercedes, now co-driven by Marcel Thiemann, is right up on the tail of leader Alexander Wurz and pushing hard, and Wurz has got a problem. Sparks coming from the back of Wurz's car. Wurz is off. And I don't know what's gone wrong in the back of the car, but sheets of sparks coming out of the back. Alexander Wurz drives on. The rear suspension looks as though it's collapsed. And he's still driving on. He's back on the circuit. Thiemann has gone off into the lead. And Alexander Wurz is nursing that car, which clearly has had some sort of breakage in the back. There's smoke and sparks coming from the rear bodywork, but he's pressing on at still a fair old rate to get that car back to the pits. And the leader now, Marcel Thiemann and Alessandro Nannini in their Mercedes-Benz. Twitching as he goes through that left-hander. The Mercedes-Benz mechanics are ready and waiting. Now the car comes in. Marcel Thiemann leads. Alexander Wurz brings that car into the pits now. Up it goes on its hydraulic inbuilt jacks, and the mechanics swarm over the back of the car. It's going to be very hot in there. Lots of sparks and smoke were coming up from the rear bodywork. And of course, this is a blow for Bernd Schneider. Remember, he is the challenger for Mercedes-Benz for the championship title. So Marcel Thiemann leads. The Ludwig Mailander car is in 2nd place. And now up into 3rd comes Steve Soper and JJ Leto. Wurz takes the Mercedes out of the pits, its rear suspension repaired, it's lost 3 laps, it's now down in 10th place. Still Mercedes 1-2, McLaren 3-4, as the Mercedes pit plot their strategy. Japanese drivers, looks as though its race is run. Now there you see the semi-works Vipers, the white ones with the thick blue stripes, and being passed by the Roberto Ravaglia McLaren and the 4th placed Gulf McLaren. Pierre-Henri Raffanel and Jean-Marc Gounon going well in that car. And that's the Japanese McLaren. Now that's got a big problem. Looks as though there's something smoking at the back. I think that's rubber smoke. It looks as though the bodywork is rubbing against the rear wheel. He must surely be bound for the pits. Sekiar, Tsuchiya and Nakaya driving that car, one of the latest McLarens entered by a Japanese team. They of course know this circuit extremely well. He's got it to the pits now. The team are waiting, and whether that's a collision with another car or just a breakage at the back, they're certainly going to have to do some work. And the rear tyre has burnt itself away, rubbing away at that bodywork at the back. Now here's a real fire. That's the Panoz. That is the Andy Wallace-James Weaver car, and that is well and truly on fire. The driver getting out, that's the American Butch Leitzinger getting out of the car, but it's well and truly on fire. They've quickly got the fire out, but I would think that's the end of that drive for the Panoz. They were in 12th place, and on this very long and hot race, 3 drivers in this car, Leitzinger joining Wallace and James Weaver for this occasion, and it was burning pretty badly at the back, and those flames looked dangerously near the cockpit. Not surprising that Butch Leitzinger got this 3rd place battle is well and truly joined with Olofsson, just a car's length ahead of Steve Soper. Remember, Soper with Leto, they're leading the championship at the moment, and Soper needs to get this 3rd place back. He lost it in the pits, and now Olofsson is really charging in the number 3 McLaren, with Soper as close as he could possibly be as they go through the hairpin and accelerating off, and one of the Mercedes is off. Which one is it? That's Ludwig. Ludwig, red mirrors, that's the second place Mercedes off the track. I don't know if that's another suspension breakage like its teammate. It looks okay. Perhaps it was simply a driver error, but Klaus Ludwig still in second place. He went off the road, got back on again without losing his second place in GT2. And this battle still going on for third place. Olofsson holding off Steve Soper. Soper pushing hard, but still Soper down in fourth place. Olofsson in the Golf car in third. And Nannini's brought in the leading Mercedes-Benz, and look who's getting into it. Bernd Schneider is taking over that Nannini car. It means Bernd Schneider is changing cars. He's taking over the lead car purely because of the championship rules allowing him to do so. This is the Cox Ravaglia McLaren. It's got front-end damage, running just inside the top 10. The Silverstone winners have had a difficult race here today, but the significant point is that Bernd Schneider has taken over the leading car, as he's entitled to do by the rules, after his own car had had a delay earlier on with that suspension breakage. There's Charlie Lamb, still Jean-Marc Gounon in third place, some way ahead now. But JJ Leto wants to get onto that podium, and he is closing hard. Former Formula One driver, of course, is Leto, and even though the McLaren hasn't got the speed of the Mercedes, now that the Mercedes has become fully developed in GT racing, Leto is a very fast man when he's really pushing on, as he is now. But pushing on too, Bernd Schneider in the leading Mercedes that he's taken over. He laps that rumbling Panoz, which is still keeping going, and in this closing stage of the race it looks as though Brabham and Perry McCarthy may well make it to the end. And now look, Soper has indeed got onto Gounod's tail. Soper's charge has taken him right up onto Jean-Marc Gounod's tail. McLaren third, McLaren fourth, but we're coming to the dying moments of this race, and Leto's going to have to make his challenge now if he's going to make it at all. Schneider, meanwhile, comfortably on his way. Nannini and Thiemann then just waiting for the victory. They've got no more work to do because Schneider's taken over their car and is racing it towards the checkered flag. And JJ Leto spun at the hairpin. He's got going again, and he's going to have to settle for fourth. There is Bernd Schneider sitting right behind him. Leto is going to have to settle for fourth place. The checkered flag is waiting as Bernd Schneider gets alongside fourth man JJ Leto. They go over the finish line. Mercedes win. Bernd Schneider helps Alessandro Nannini and Marcel Thiemann to the checkered flag. Schneider therefore scores maximum Drivers' Championship points again. It's a 1-2 for Mercedes. McLarens are third and fourth, and the Beretta Gash Viper, lights ablaze, makes it a start-to-finish win in GT2.
So another Mercedes 1-2 here in Suzuka, with Bernd Schneider once again in the winning car. For the first time this season, Steve Soper and JJ Leto finished behind a Golf car and off the podium. Good to see Andrew Gilbert-Scott, though, in 6th. After 7 races, this is the top of the Drivers' Championship, and it looks tight now. Schneider just 3 points behind Leto and Soper. The Team Championship is even closer, with BMW and Mercedes dead level. Just being made to the GT cars before they go out and make their way round to the grid. Just to remind you of the Drivers' Championship situation, JJ Leto and Steve Soper in the McLaren BMW lead the Drivers' Championship, but they've slowly and surely been hauled in by Bernd Schneider of Mercedes. But a slightly strange situation there. Simon Taylor is with me. A couple of times Bernd Schneider has changed his car during the race, Simon.
Well, the rules used to allow a driver to change cars mid-race. So if your car broke down, your team manager could bring in one of the other cars in the team and you could take that over. In Austria and again in Japan, in the last 2 rounds, Schneider, the real championship challenger for Mercedes, had a breakdown. So he was able to take over one of the other Mercedes and win the race. That caused a lot of controversy. And in the end, after much discussion, the rules have been changed mid-season, most unusual circumstance, and now swapping cars mid-race is not permitted. And not surprisingly, that's produced very differing reactions among the championship contenders.
I always like to have stable rules during the season. If you like to have any changes, you can change it after the season or before the season.
But during the season, it's not good to make any change on the rules.
It was difficult for the drivers to understand, that, if it's a really fair game, you run with only one car, and if you don't finish, you don't get the points. But, it's not because of Mercedes, it's because of the rules were a little bit funny, and I'm really happy that everybody agreed, all the manufacturers, they agreed to change the rule, and, now it's more like a sportsmanship rule, which is, it makes it more interesting,
But when the cars came out to qualify, Mercedes showed who was boss with 1, 2, 3 on the grid. Leto's partner and championship leader Steve Soper soon realised the McLarens were under threat, with Schneider's pole position time 1.5 seconds faster than his. Silver arrows at the head of the rolling grid, Schneider, Nannini and Ludwig, then the 2 McLarens of Ravaglia and Leto, and the GT1 Porsche of Bob Wallach. They come round to complete their rolling lap, and as the pace car pulls off, they come towards the start-finish line. Those 3 Mercedes engine notes rise, and into the lead goes Schneider. From Nannini, from Ludwig. Leto's going inside Roberto Ravaglia to get into 4th place ahead of his teammate. Jan Lammers is in there in the little yellow Lotus. That's up in 6th place. Thierry Boutsen's there in the Porsche. And then the Rafanel Gulf McLaren as they go sweeping through the Prada curves and down towards the bottom of the hill. Mercedes, Schneider pulling away, Mercedes, McLaren, Lotus, Porsche, then a string more McLarens, and Chris Goodwin was well up there in the yellow McLaren. I made him in 9th place. Behind him, there's one of the GT1 Porsches, that's Bob Wallach. Frank Lagorce in the black Dams Panoz is in 11th place. Then there's the yellow GT1 Porsche of Christophe Bouchou, the rest of the field streaming through. But those 3 silver Mercedes, the one with the yellow mirrors in the lead, that's Bernd Schneider. Then the blue mirrored car in 2nd place, that's Alessandro Nannini. And the red mirrors means it's Klaus Ludwig. The rest of them all steaming through the tight S's, which take them onto the downhill section into the Melbourne hairpin. I can see that black Dams Panoz making up a place there as they jostle for position. Somebody locking up their brakes. That looked like the Marcos, the GT2 Marcos of Core Oyser, which is leading that category by the look of things from one of the Vipers. But now they start the 2nd lap, and look at that lead already that Bernd Schneider's got from Nannini, from Ludwig. We ride now with Chris Goodwin. This is Chris Goodwin going for 8th place on the inside of Rafanel. Oh, he hit him! He hit him! Rafanel spins off! Goodwin's okay! Goodwin keeps going. Goodwin has 8th. Rafanel spins off. I don't know quite whose fault one would think that might have been, but certainly Chris Goodwin's on the tarmac, and Rafanel briefly was off it, and Chris Goodwin's up to 8th. Here is Schneider in the lead. Mercedes getting well and truly in among the back markers, and this is going to be the start of the traffic problems which so many of these drivers have talked about, because we've got over 40 cars on the circuit. The circuit is fairly narrow, and the speed differential between the fastest cars and the slowest is very great. Now, Chris Goodwin on the tail now of the GT1 Porsche of Thierry Boutsen. Oh, and Boutsen spins! Boutsen spun! Boutsen spins out of 7th place, and he spins harmlessly across the front of Chris Goodwin, who goes through now into 7th place. Meanwhile, Bernd Schneider having a bit of traffic problem, nudging his way past one of the GT2 Porsches. There's a Chamberlain Viper to be passed. Then there's Jamie Campbell-Walter in the TVR, who holds him up briefly, unintentionally, before the leader is able to slot by on the right. Then there's Nick Carr in the Bullets, is now in the leading Mercedes-Benz, the Bernd Schneider car. He is in the lead, and Klaus Ludwig and Bernd Maylander were delayed in the pits because they came in when the other 2 cars were already in. A bit of a muddle by the Mercedes team. That's dropped them well down the order. But Marcel Thiemann in the Alessandro Nannini car is in 2nd place, and all of that has promoted JJ Leto to 3rd place. The brakes on the Christophe Bouchou GT1 Porsche look a little hot, but meanwhile, Leader Wurz is lapping both his own teammate, Bernd Maylander, and also Pierre-Henri Rafanel, and Rafanel and Maylander are actually battling for 6th place. Behind the yellow mirrored Mercedes is the battle between the McLaren and the red mirrored Mercedes for 6th place. Mercedes first, Mercedes second, McLaren third, McLaren fourth. Those are the two Schnitzer cars. Oh, and a collision here between the Marcos of Harold Becker and Yannick Dalmas. And Harold Becker's Marcos, the Core-Oyser car that was leading GT1 at the beginning. We're seeing a replay colliding with Yannick Dalmas and the GT1 Porsche. They both go off, and the GT1 Porsche seems to be pointing in the right direction with very little damage, but the Marcos is spinning across the grass with its front bodywork completely awry. Chris Goodwin still in a great fifth place in the Parabolica McLaren. Big twitch from the leading Mercedes of Alexander Wurz as he comes up to lap Goodwin. And that's the French Panoz coming to a halt. Eric Bernard now at the wheel. It's been running in an impressive ninth place. Meanwhile, Alessandro Nannini ready to get back into the second place Mercedes as Steve Soper gets into the Lato McLaren, and in comes Alexander Wurz for Bernd Schneider to take over again. Two Mercedes in the pits at once. Nannini taking over from Thiemann, Schneider taking over from Wurz as the Wurz car with Schneider now at the wheel gets away, so they just finish work with a tyre change on Alessandro Nannini's car. And a problem for Peter Cox. We're seeing a replay. Peter Cox had pulled away from Mailander in fourth place, but here he is getting it all completely wrong. He spun away that fourth place in the second of the Schnitzer BMW McLarens across the grass. Charlie Lamb and the Schnitzer team looking none too happy, and now we're riding with the leader, Alexander Wurz in the Bernd Schneider Mercedes in the closing laps now. Oh, that 911's got in his way, a big bang there for the leading car. Alexander Wurz could not avoid that GT2 Porsche. The Mercedes boys looking very worried. The Porsche's off on the grass, and that leading car is still going. We're going to see it again as they come down the start-finish straight towards Redgate. There's the red GT1 Porsche in front, but there is the Saldana d'Orléans GT2 Porsche getting badly in the way. There's a real collision there, and we wait to see whether that will have damaged the leading car at all. Norbert Haug there in the dark glasses, waiting and wondering. This is Peter Cox making up time after that spin, but that of course dropped him behind the Mailander Mercedes. But we're getting reports from the other side of the circuit that the front of the leading Mercedes is smoking. There's bodywork rubbing apparently on the front, but that's a different sort of smoke. That's a Marcos on fire. Thomas Erdos and Christian Van, their Marcos also catches fire. But now look at this Mercedes. Look at the front left-hand wheel arch, and some of the time at least there is rubber rubbing on carbon fibre, but it doesn't seem to be slowing Alexander Wurz at all. And now a problem for the Parabolica McLaren. In the very closing moments of this Donington race, the drama goes on. The smoke from the back of that car looks like bodywork rubbing on a wheel, but Gary Ailes has slowed right down, and I wonder whether that car's going to be able to get to the finish. Lots of smoke coming from the back of the Parabolica McLaren, which is running outside the top six now anyway, so championship points not at stake there as the Mercedes continue, and Alexander Wurz is carrying on with that car. It's Mercedes first, second and fourth. JJ Leto and Steve Soper still in third place, and the Parabolica McLaren has indeed stopped. It's got a wheel missing. The right rear wheel has come off that car, and poor old Chris Goodwin cannot believe that that's how his great race has had to finish. So Alexander Wurz comes home. The checkered flag waves, the headlights flash, the blue Mercedes flags wave too. Marcel Thiemann is second, and Steve Soper brings the McLaren home third. In GT2, it's going to be Philippe Gache. There's Olivier Beretta waving him home. Philippe Gache brings the Viper home to win GT2. And Mercedes, the champagne's out.
So once again, Mercedes well on top. First, second and fourth. McCarthy and Brabham were the best placed. Panoz in eighth. But disappointment for those Parabolica boys.
From the second pit stop, we had the vibration, which was getting progressively worse and worse and worse, and until the wheel fell off.
That was 5 minutes from the end.
I know, it's a bit disheartening, really. I also got smacked up the back by a GT2 Porsche that must missed his braking area and used me to stop, which spun me round. But, OK, that cost us some time, but the end result, you know, that is disappointing.
Steve, overall, happy or not? I mean, you've sort of done as much as you can, haven't you?
Well, maybe, but not happy with third place. I mean, without being a bad sportsman, I was praying that Snyder's car would stop, but it didn't. So we've now lost the lead, and we'll have to have some luck to get it back, I think.
Here's confirmation of that bad news for Steve and JJ. Bernd Schneider now 3 points ahead in the Drivers' Championship after 8 races. In GT2, Justin Bell is still in touch, down in 5th place. Eichmann and Hürtgen tying for the lead. 1, 2, 3 here at Mugello, and probably the favourites, but these two chaps might not agree. Steve Soper and JJ Leto in the McLaren BMW. Steve, what chance do you think you have still in this championship?
Well, there's still 3 races to go. I think it's wide open. Obviously, they're very competitive, but our sort of ace card, if you like, has been our reliability, and hopefully now Snyder can't jump from car to car. So if we're reliable here and he has a problem, we could cling some points back. But I don't know. I mean, to outrace them, maybe we can do it here. I don't think they're as competitive as they've been elsewhere, but they always surprise us as what they can do. So we'll have to wait and see, but we haven't given up yet.
JJ, 4th on the grid and you're taking the start. What's the strategy then?
Go flat out. What else can we say, you know? If, I mean, we really have to play the game right, but, you know, the only way is to go as fast as you can all the way, and just hope that the Michelin tires are working well enough. I mean, we have good tire here, and we are much closer to Mercedes than we have been in the last 2-3 races, so it looks good in that way. But, you know, it's 4 hours, and it's up to tires quite a lot on this circuit. This is very hard on front tires, and, you know, hopefully the tires and also the setup we have is good enough to be quick enough, you know.
OK, well, good luck to both of you. I'm sure every neutral here would like to see the championship stay alive. Let's find out now how the other cars have qualified.
No surprise to see Bernd Schneider once again on pole, with the other 2 Mercedes, CLK's 2nd and 3rd. Schneider's lap was nearly a second quicker than JJ Leto's in the McLaren. But remember, drivers must now stay in the car they start the race with.
In the race, I think the McLaren BMW will be in good shape, and will be a bit more harder than in qualifying. I hope we can get it and can get a bigger distance in the point standing, but it looks maybe easier than it is, and I think
3 Mercedes leading the rolling grid from the Leto McLaren. Frank Lagorce has qualified a surprising 5th in the French Panoz, ahead of Yannick Dalmas, 6th in the fastest of the Porsches. And as they come up to the start-finish line, the course car pulls off, the race is on, the 2 Mercedes move, but it's Schneider who is easing ahead as they go up the slight incline and downhill again towards that long first right-hander. It's Schneider with the yellow mirrors who's on the outside, with the red mirrors. Ludwig goes into 2nd place. Alessandro Nannini on his own ground, of course, in 3rd place. That is the sandy ground Lotus, which has to start late from the pit lane. But yellow mirrors from red mirrors from blue mirrors means that it's Schneider leading, Ludwig in 2nd place, Nannini in 3rd place, JJ Leto's McLaren is 4th. Puff of smoke there from the yellow McLaren. That is the Parabolica car moving up. The rest of the field jockeying for position, but it is indeed a Mercedes 1, 2, 3 as they come sweeping through the curves behind the pits, behind the paddock. It's Schneider from Ludwig, from Nannini. Leto is 4th. Frank Lagorce is in 5th place. It's Roberto Ravaglia 6th in the 2nd Schnitzer McLaren, and then Yannick Dalmas. Jan Lammers and the little yellow Lotus has started well once again. He's 8th, ahead of Boutsen, Bouchou, Collard, who is 11th, and Raffanel 12th. The GT1 Porsches showing in 7th, 9th, 10th and 11th places, so they're better placed at this early stage than they have been in several of the recent rounds. And a little run up the curb there for the normally scrupulously tidy Bernd Schneider, but he's obviously pushing on very hard, as he likes to do in this early stage, to try and build up a cushion from the pursuit. Schneider, Ludwig, Nannini, a glimpse there of the GT2 cars, which are being led at the moment by the Viper, of Philippe Gache ahead of the Bruno Eichmann Porsche, but there once more the Mercedes 1, 2, 3. The white McLaren with the red checkered stripe down the middle, that is JJ Later's our leader, Bernd Schneider. Now a solid lead for the Mercedes with the yellow mirrors, still a Mercedes 1, 2, 3. Yannick Dalmas, there he is, now ahead of the black Panoz and up into 5th place. And in 4th place, of course, is this McLaren. That's JJ Lato with a distinctive central driving position on these 3-seater McLarens, in theory anyway, when they're in road form. And that Lotus of Jan Lammers has a huge queue behind it now. Raffanel, Olofsson in the 2 Gulf McLarens, then their wonderful orange and blue livery. Then it's the red and white Porsche of Emmanuel Collard and the yellow McLaren of Gary Ailes, the Parabolica car. Remember, they started 17th on the grid. So Gary Ailes has done an excellent job of getting the Gulf McLarens now in sight, with only the Collard Porsche between him and Olofsson's car. Now the crews are getting ready, because soon we will have the first of the routine stops. That's Alexander Wurz. Now Wurz is going to take over Bernd Schneider's car, and Schneider comes in. Schneider brings in the leading car. Wurz is ready with his seat. Out gets Schneider, in gets Wurz's seat, followed by Wurz, who clambers into the tight confines of the CLK's cockpit. Out gets Alessandro Nannini from the 3rd place car. In gets Marcel Thiemann. All the routine pit stops taking place. Mailander has taken over from Ludwig in the other Mercedes, and Steve Soper's had a very quick stop, taking over from JJ Lato. It's still Mercedes 1, 2, 3, but look at this. Thiemann in the Nannini car has taken 2nd. Mailander's there in 3rd place, and right with them is Steve Soper. 2nd, 3rd and 4th. The 2 Mercedes and the McLaren tucked right in there. They've got Jeff Leese's Gulf McLaren to lap, but Steve Soper is right up with the 2nd and 3rd place Mercedes in that traffic. Meanwhile, Chris Good has Mugello and Bernd Schneider storming through the back markers, trying to keep the pace up, because the McLaren is not far behind him in 2nd place. Coming up now to lap Pierluigi Martini, and the red GT1 Porsche goes alongside him. Oh, and they've collided! Off goes Pierluigi Martini. He hit the GT2 Porsche that he was lapping. The car of Bernhard Müller, and Schneider's off too! Schneider is off! Schneider was T-boned by the 911 as it went off. There is Pierluigi Martini walking back unharmed to the pits, but off is the lead car. The Mercedes is off. Bernd Schneider's looking at the right-hand side of the car. I think he's going to try and get it going. He's running round to the other side. But meanwhile, the McLaren of JJ Lato and now Steve Soper, there he is, leads the race here at Mugello. McLaren's lead Mercedes. A tremendous storming drive by Steve Soper, and off has gone the leading Mercedes of Bernd Schneider. But it's not over yet. Come back to Mugello with Schneider's Mercedes punted out of the race. Steve Soper leads for McLaren, but the 3rd place Mercedes of Mailander is now in the pits with problems. Let's see that accident again as Martini goes off to the right of your picture. Bernhard Müller's little Porsche goes off to the left, and out of our sight, T-bones Schneider. It's all good news. Schneider getting that battered Mercedes back to the pits, but I think his race is run. But now Steve Soper it is who's under pressure, because Alessandro Nannini is back in the Mercedes with the blue mirrors. Soper is the leader, but Nannini is right on his tail, and now this is a McLaren versus Mercedes battle for the lead. Soper versus Nannini, and look at Nannini go. Nannini on a home Italian circuit in front of an Italian crowd. He's being cheered to the echo. Steve Soper, the British driver in the BMW-powered Schnitzer McLaren, the all-Mercedes V12 car pursuing him. They're watching it in the pits. That's Lulu Soper on the left, JJ Lato on the right, and they don't know whether to bite their nails or watch the picture as through the back markers, and in fact getting stuck behind one of the Lotuses there, Alessandro Nannini. The traffic always playing its part, the headlights blazing from these leading cars, and that's given Soper a little breathing space. The Lotus in a first fall. Still, it's Soper, but now Nannini leaves his braking very late. He takes a wide line. He's going to try and tuck in on the inside. No, he's going to go round the outside. But Soper shuts the door once more, and Nannini was so late on the brakes for the sweeps up the hill. I thought he was going to go over the top of Sopa's car. In fact, he's on the grass there. A mistake by Nannini, but he holds the car straight. Sopa 1, Nannini 2, McLaren leads, Mercedes second, and the back markers still remaining a problem as they go thundering down the hill into the right-left sweeps behind the paddock. And still Steve Sopa holds off Alessandro Nannini, two of the best drivers in endurance racing. Nannini, of course, a former Grand Prix star before he had that terrible injury in a helicopter accident. There you see him going over the curbs, the Mercedes bouncing across the grass, but he gets it back onto the circuit again. It hasn't even slowed him down. Now there are some back markers in front again, and these should be keeping out of the way, but they could be crucial. That little 911 keeps out of the way, and now Nannini almost tucked under the back of the McLaren as they go through the tight right-hander and then accelerate on. A twitch there from Nannini as he gets 650 horsepower going through the back wheels of that big silver Mercedes, and for a moment Sopa eases away once more. Sopa so smooth, so tidy. Nannini a little bit more untidy, but this Mercedes is a ferociously fast car. They're coming up behind one of the Lotuses once more. Headlights blazing from both McLaren and from Mercedes. Lulu doesn't know whether she should look or shut her eyes, and now Nannini is tucked in the slipstream as they come now down towards some back markers there, and Sopa goes one side, and round the outside goes Nannini. A fantastic manoeuvre. He left his braking so late, and Mercedes lead once more. Nannini takes the lead from Steve Sopa. Mercedes 1, McLaren 2. What a wonderful battle. There's still quite a lot of earth on the circuit there from where Nannini went off on Steve Sopa. Steve Sopa brings in the second place McLaren. He's had a wonderful drive, just 44 years old yesterday, Steve Sopa. He clambers out, his day's work is over, but JJ Leto gets in because he's still got some racing to do. They've got his special seat in, coming in from the other side. He's doing up his belts. They're refueling the car. The door is shut now, and when they've got the refueling finished, then they can start on the wheels and tyres. That's what the regulations say. You do the refueling, then you do the wheels and tyres. On go a new set of Michelins. Put your foot on the brake pedal, says the mechanic, so the wheel doesn't turn. We can get it tightened up and on quickly. Now they've got those wheels on. Off the jacks it goes. So JJ Leto back into the pits. Now this is the leading Mercedes in, and Nannini is staying in that car. Tiemann was ready to get in, but Nannini is staying in. They're refueling the car. You can see Tiemann just behind the car with his crash helmet on, waiting, but as JJ Leto goes roaring out, on go the headlights of the Mercedes. They're finishing off the wheels and tyres. It's ready, it's done, it's off the jacks, and away goes Alessandro Nannini. Is he going to get back in the lead? Yes, he does. He comes out again before the headlights of the McLaren come down the start-finish straight. Meanwhile, off goes the Collard Baldi Porsche. That looks pretty well done into the gravel, but we've got Mercedes in the lead, we've got McLaren in second place. Nannini is still the leader, but JJ Leto in second place, the fastest, most determined driver of all when his Scandinavian blood is up, and he is now in the top 10. But now the Mercedes has got the headlights of the McLaren in its mirrors. A little bit of bodywork hanging off on the front left-hand side of that Mercedes. Oh, and he's sideways! Oh, he nearly loses it. Nannini nearly loses it. Nannini goes wide, and that's going to change the lead. It has. The McLaren's got ahead. JJ Leto has taken the lead. It's McLaren 1, Mercedes 2. This is GT Championship racing at its absolute best. And 2 final rounds in North America left to go. The Rafael Gounon McLaren is shadowing JJ there a lap down as he comes through the final long left-hander, and now the start-finish straight is in sight. The man with the checkered flag is in sight. The finish line is in sight, and the checkered flag waves now as JJ Leto crosses the start-finish line, rejoicing from Charlie Lamb and Steve Sopa in the Schnitzer BMW pit. A kiss from Steve for Lulu. A great victory for McLaren. Mercedes-Benz have been vanquished today here in Mugello, and McLaren are back on top.
That was a win you really needed. Yeah, it's always nice to win, but we've opened our chances again for the championship, so we now come away with 7 points, 2 races to go. Anything's possible.
There must have been a time when you thought Mercedes were just going to keep getting ahead now.
Well, you always need a bit of luck in motor racing, and I mean, they showed the sportiness, and Schneider couldn't jump into another car today. So I think we did a good job. Team, tyres, drivers. I think the whole package worked very well today.
Alessandro Nannini comes home second for Mercedes, but here's Bruno Eichmann's Porsche weaving about because that car is running out of petrol. There are some fast cars coming up behind, and he weaves across very dangerously and crosses the line finally second for GT2.
So the luck this time with Leto and Soper. Mercedes forced into second, Dalmas and Wallach in third. Not such a good day for Parabolica. Steve Soper retake the lead after their victory here in Italy, but can they keep Bernd Schneider at bay?
Circuit at Sebring for their first glimpse of the FIA GT cars in action. This famous old track has seen some epic battles down the years, but many of the teams are worried about the safety of this very bumpy 3.6-mile circuit. Britain's Julian Bailey is giving the Lister Storm its first run in the series. He's qualified an impressive 16th, just behind the Gulf McLarens. Anders Olofsson and Jeff Lees, the best of that team, in 9th. But once again, it's the remarkable JJ Leto in the BMW McLaren who set the fastest time, despite this spin. After their win at the last race at Mugello in Italy, the championship leaders are now well placed to keep their Mercedes rivals at bay. Lining up alongside Steve and JJ as their rival for the driver's title, Bernd Schneider, who knows he's got a fight on his hands.
It will be very hard, and we have to beat the BMW here. Otherwise, we're losing the championship, and that means there's quite a lot of pressure on our shoulders. But we will do our best, for sure.
IndyCar star Greg Moore gets his first taste of sports cars in the third Mercedes, starting 5th.
On the racetrack, I drove a NASCAR for about 6 hours at Hockenheim, but other than that, this is the only race car I've ever driven that has a roof over it, and it takes a little while to get used to it, but once you've gotten used to it, it's just another car. It's got 4 wheels and steering wheel and 3 pedals, so you just got to...
Teammate of Soper and JJ Leto. They're coming now onto the home straight. Wait for the green flag, and then the race will be on. There's the green flag. The race is underway, and it's the Mercedes that's easing ahead. It's Schneider who takes the lead. The Nannini Mercedes almost getting into second place, but Steve Soper has taken second place. Oh, and they're colliding at the first corner. They've touched. Somebody's gone off. I think it's the Mercedes that is off. In fact, also off is the Soper McLaren. One of the Porsches went off as well, but there is the Schneider Mercedes well down the field. We didn't see it in the pictures, but I could see it from here, that it looked like a collision of some sort between the leading Mercedes of Schneider, the second place McLaren of Steve Soper. Hans Schnuck was delayed as well, got onto the grass, and it's Nannini who leads. Alessandro Nannini is our leader. Yannick Dalmas is in second place, Peter Cox is third, Greg Moore is in fourth place, and Steve Soper and Bernd Schneider have both restarted. We're going to see a replay. There is the McLaren hitting the back of the Mercedes. The Mercedes spins. We're riding now with Hans Stuck, and we're riding on the grass. All 3 cars get on the grass. And here's another picture now of Julian Bailey in the Lister Storm, and watch that Mercedes elbowing its way back up past John Greasley's Porsche, well down the field for Bernd Schneider. This is a real blow for him at the start, but his car seems to be okay, as does Steve Soper's. The race goes on, Mercedes lead, but it's the car of Alessandro Nannini that leads from the Porsche of Dalmas. And there is the Dalmas Porsche following the Mercedes. You always have to look with these Mercedes at the colour of the mirrors, and it's the silver Mercedes with blue mirrors that leads. That's the Alessandro Nannini car, and the championship challenger in the Mercedes team, which is the Mercedes with yellow mirrors. That's Bernd Schneider's car, of course. He is well down, I think, in about 12th place. I make Steve Soper about 9th. That is absolutely flying. There's the leading trio. That McLaren with its headlights on. That is Steve Soper's teammate, with the Dutchman Peter Cox at the wheel, sharing with the Italian Roberto Ravaglia. 1, 2, 3, Mercedes, Porsche and McLaren. And there's a very, very long way to go. The road absolutely dry now. There's one of the little GT2 Porsches, which is in trouble already, but that three-car battle at the front, it's the number 2 Mercedes, the number 2 Porsche, and the number 2 McLaren in those 3 teams, because they're 3 number 1 cars, all delayed at Mercedes. That's Greg Moore's car in 4th place. There's Greg Moore with the red mirrors, and the McLaren's on the inside. The McLaren spins. Greg Moore shut the door on him, and Bernd Schneider manages to miss the spinning McLaren, which keeps going. Little wriggle from the tail as a furious Steve Soper gets the power back on, but that will have dropped him further down the order once more. Greg Moore, but Bashir comes in and they can't get that McLaren going. Another delay for Steve Soper, and now they've wheeled it back. They've put it up on the jacks again. They couldn't get it started, and they're putting wet weather tyres on. They've had a dramatic change of strategy. It is now starting to rain, and they've taken off the slick tyres, they put on the wet weather tyres, they've got the car going. Steve Soper goes back into the race, and there is Bernd Schneider, his windscreen wiper working as well. Yes, and we've got rain here now. I can tell you it is now raining by our commentary position as well, and this circuit is going to start to get very, very slippery indeed, and we may find that that gamble played by the Schnitzer BMW team, that early stop for wet weather tyres, that long stop that he had, may have been the right thing to do. Did you see the leader there, the blue mirrored Mercedes of Alessandro Nannini, having a big weave as he went across the now very slippery concrete, the car bouncing in showers of sparks. There's the Porsche following, that's Yannick Dalmas, windscreen wipers going for him too. And it's now, when there's a little bit of rain on what is already a rubbery, and he's made his stop and he's looking smooth and comfortable out there in front. Peter Cox in 2nd place in the Schnitzer McLaren. Bernd Schneider has made his way up to 3rd place in the Mercedes that was delayed right at the start. Greg Moore, his Mercedes teammate, is 4th. We've therefore got 3 Mercedes in the top 4. And in 5th place, the gallant David Grabham, who's having a wonderful drive in the Panoz ahead of Anders Olafsson's McLaren. There's the little Morgan you can see with one of its headlights on. Coming through after it, the leading Mercedes. Oh, and this is a spin, a replay of a spin. That's Hans Stuck's Porsche. So despite his GT2 lead, off goes a Mercedes. That's the leading car. That is Nannini, a trip across the grass, and Peter Cox is going to get him. Peter Cox right alongside and inside him for the right-hander. A change of lead, therefore. A little mistake from Alessandro Nannini. He just ran wide across the grass, and that was enough for Peter Cox to get a run down the inside. McLaren lead, Mercedes 2nd, 3rd and 4th. And we see it again, just understeering wide as he comes to that right-hander, just as he goes onto that slick and slippery concrete, and he's on even more slippery grass. Somewhere underneath that car, there could well be a plastic motorway cone. Now we've got another spin. This is one of the Gulf cars. That's Thomas Bashir getting it extremely wrong and going through 360, no, 720 degrees. And the car coming to a wet and sudden halt in that flooded grass. The conditions here are absolutely dreadful, and I'm surprised that they haven't brought out the safety car, because as we watch the leader, Peter Cox, go on his way, it's absolutely waterlogged. And the real problem in a race like this, where there is such a disparity of speed between the quickest GT1s and the slowest GT2s, the real problem is traffic and visibility in the traffic. There's the leader going past the Marcos, with his high-speed windscreen wiper sweeping as much of the water as possible off his screen. Peter Cox, the Dutchman, still leads. Mercedes 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Alessandro Nannini holding on to that 2nd place despite that off-course excursion. But the conditions are getting worse. It is raining harder. Oh, and there's Nannini. Nannini spun again. He's in the wall. He's pointing in the wrong direction. The yellow flags are waving. Can he get it started? Can he get it moving? No, the door comes open. Alessandro Nannini's race looks as though it's run, and you can see he's not at all happy about it. But meanwhile, one Mercedes out, another Mercedes battling for the lead, because Bernd Schneider is now up with Peter Cox. We've got a McLaren versus a Mercedes for the lead. Peter Cox in the Schnitzer McLaren leads, Bernd Schneider in 2nd place, and on the attack on this treacherously slippery circuit. They're coming up now to where the yellow flags are waving. Peter Cox is about to approach where Nannini went off. He's got Schneider behind him, and Schneider, I think, is aware. Yes, he goes past the yellow flags, he hangs back. He's not trying to overtake now, because if you overtake under a yellow flag, you're in trouble. That means a side back car as Alexander Wurz takes over. Now, Schneider's got that lead. Schneider has passed Peter Cox, headlights ablaze. Bernd Schneider, the championship challenger to JJ Leto and Steve Soper, now has the lead, and the rain continues to torrent down on what is now a completely waterlogged and very, very slippery circuit. Schneider the leader, Peter Cox in the McLaren is in second place. In a wonderful third place, we've got David Brabham. He's driven all the way from the start in that Panoz, which has tremendous cockpit temperatures. It must be very hot in there indeed, but David Brabham in third place. In fourth place, it's the Dams Panoz, the French-entered Panoz, Frank Lagorce at the wheel now, and Emmanuel Collard and Mauro Baldi, their Porsche GT1, is in fifth place. And Steve Soper, after all his problems, the delay on the very first corner of the race, the spin when he and Greg Moore tried to use the same piece of road, and then that disastrously long pit stop, they couldn't start the car, and then they decided to make an early change onto wet weather tyres. Well, that wasn't a bad idea, and they have recovered. I say they, Steve Panoz, and we've got the safety car out. SC and a yellow flag, that means the safety car is coming out. The weather is so dreadful here at Sebring that the safety car is now going to go out. The safety car will find the leader, will slot onto the circuit in front of it, and will then lead the entire field round in a slow-moving queue. Nobody is allowed to change their position. That's Raffanel and Gounon in their McLaren. And look at the water that is lying on the circuit. And going motor racing in these conditions really isn't on. So the Sebring organisers, not before time, it might be said, have brought out that safety car. Flag, we have a green flag, and once more the race is on, and leading that queue back into full race mode is Bernd Schneider, the silver Mercedes with the yellow mirrors. And isn't he the lucky boy, because he is the only person with a completely clear road ahead of him. There's still a lot of standing water, and that means there's going to be spray, there are going to be visibility problems for the pursuing traffic. Battle there between the black Panoz and the red GT1 Porsche. They're battling for 8th place, Lagorce and Collard. But behind them is the Mercedes, the one with the red mirrors. That's the car that Greg Moore started the race in. It's now being driven by the hugely talented young Austrian Alexander Wurz. Now the leader coming down the long straight. On the tarmac, comes off the tarmac onto the concrete. Oh, and he loses it. He leaves his braking much too late. He's back on the circuit again. But that is an indication, if we needed one, that Bernd Schneider is still pushing very, very hard indeed. And it's also an indication of just how difficult this unusual Sebring leading car, and he's got it in the pit lane now. Bernd Schneider brings the Mercedes, the leading car, into the pits. Klaus Ludwig is ready by the left-hand door. Out gets Schneider. In gets Klaus Ludwig, clambering into the seat of this left-hand drive Mercedes CLK Coupe. That's the Panoz. Perry McCarthy waiting to take over the second place Panoz. Out into the race goes Klaus Ludwig. Ludwig on his way as David Brabham, after a stunning drive, a great, great drive from the Australian. Perry McCarthy ready, holding his seat to third, and there is JJ now. JJ absolutely storming through the traffic. JJ, the fastest car on the circuit at the moment. He's got a little GT1 Porsche to get round. He neatly slots on the inside of that, and the V12 BMW in the back of the McLaren singing its song. JJ Leto in fourth place, but he's going to have to improve on that if he's going to retain the championship lead here at Sebring, with only one race to go after this one. Remember, there are the two Porsches of Bob Wallach and Thierry Boutsen, the Hans Stuck car, running together. It has had so many delays, but that car is now up into fourth place and catching the third-placed Panoz of Perry McCarthy hand over fist. So, on his way, JJ Leto. There's fire! The car's on fire! That car is absolutely ablaze. Does JJ Leto know he's driving on? He must know. Is he looking for a fire point? The car is well and truly ablaze, and he must know that that car is on fire. He's now slow. He's now looking for a fire marshal. He's going straight to a fire marshal's point. very quick thinking. The fire marshals are there. The car is well on fire. Where are the marshals? They're behind the barrier. Why don't those marshals get over the barrier and help JJ Leto? The car is burning. JJ Leto is behind that, so he's gone to get the fire extinguisher. JJ Leto is putting the fire out himself, and where, oh, where are the official fire marshals who are there? And JJ Leto has snatched the fire extinguisher. He's putting the fire out himself. The official Sebring organisers are doing absolutely nothing. He's looking in the back of the... He's trying to get the fire extinguisher foam right at the back. The fire extinguisher's empty. Now he's gone to get another one. And still he's trying to put the fire out. Where is the official fire truck? Where are the fire marshals? JJ Leto, the driver, doing everything that he can. Now, there is a fire truck with some rather slow-moving fire marshals. One of them is just putting on his fire suit. But this is the most extraordinary demonstration of incompetence. JJ Leto still trying to put the fire out on that car. No official firemen working at all. And JJ Leto, now, look, he's trying to open the back to get at the engine where the fire is. He's peeling off the bodywork. It looks as though his hands are burnt. And now he's getting the fire extinguisher and still working on the car. And still there is no sign here at Sebring of any official fireman. He throws away the empty fire extinguisher in disgust and frustration. Finally, a fire truck arrives. But that is a disgrace, and the BMW Schnitzer team, watching their television sets, can barely believe the incompetence shown by the official organisers here at Sebring. And of course, Bernd Schneider now knows that that means, you can slow down, guys, that means that the championship is really moving. That shows how confident Klaus Ludwig is, because although Roberto Bravaglia is still in a strong second place, there he is there in the white McLaren, he is almost a lap behind. So it's Mercedes 1, it's McLaren 2, and of course it's Panoz 3, because Perry McCarthy has carried on the good work of David Brabham, humbling the Porsches, and there Klaus Ludwig content to follow Alex Wurz home, because he knows he, with Bernd Schneider, is going to be the winner here at Sebring of a race which has been long and difficult and extremely wet. The checkered flag waves. Alex Wurz goes through actually to finish 7th, and there, headlights ablaze, is the Mercedes of Klaus Ludwig rejoicing in the Mercedes pit. Bernd Schneider is there, but the big cheers are coming in the Panoz pit. Panoz finished 3rd on their home ground.
A GT Championship will go to the final race of the season. Here's confirmation of that result from Sebring in Florida. In first place, Bernd Schneider and Klaus Ludwig in their Mercedes. Peter Cox and Roberto Ravaglia second for the McLaren BMW team. And in third, finally getting things right for Panoz, Perry McCarthy and David Brabham. Championship standings. In the drivers' table, Bernd Schneider's win gives him a slender 3-point lead over Steve Soper and JJ Leto going into the final race. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes have a bigger advantage, 15 points, but they can still be caught by BMW. And these are the GT2 placings. Britain's Justin Bell, the leading driver from his Viper teammates Gash and Beretta. No points this time for Hürtgen and Eichmann, so to catch Justin, they really need a win in California. The team championship is already decided. The Orica Vipers have sewn it up. Will be decided today, and McLaren BMW have sprung a surprise on the grid because they've split their two leading drivers, JJ Leto and Steve Soper, the only men who can catch Bernd Schneider in the Mercedes, driving in separate cars. It's a bit of a gamble, a final roll of the dice, if you like, to try to break that Mercedes domination. Steve, for the first time this season, you're split from JJ. Explain the reasoning to us.
Well, I suppose it's really, we can double our chances. We didn't want to do it, Charlie. Nobody really wanted to do it, but at the end of the day, if we have a problem with car 8 and we're both in car 8, whether it be an accident or a mechanical problem, and Byrne also has a problem, and then number 9 finishes in the first 3, we look pretty stupid that we haven't won the championship. So this way, we got 2 chances.
But it's either or now. Only you or JJ can actually win the championship.
Well, it depends what Snyder's doing, but if Snyder's out, then we've got a plan.
Well, Mercedes have a plan too. There's championship leader Schneider on the front row, but on pole is teammate Alex Wurz, who's going to help Schneider all he can.
Yeah, for sure will help him. That's also the reason why I swapped the cars. I'm now driving with Greg Moore to help Bernd. Before I was driving with him, I joined him the whole year, and now we are here to help him to win the Drivers' Championship for Bernd, but also we need to make sure that we win the Constructors' Championship.
That's me, I'm part of the family, so, and I think they're going to do it. I mean, the cars are very strong, but I think it's going to be a great race here. This is a great race circuit. They're going to enjoy it.
They certainly are. Here they come. 3 Mercedes plus Alan McNish in the Porsche. Then the Dalmas Porsche and Championship challenger Lato in the McLaren. They're away. 3 Mercedes move. Wurz, Schneider, Nannini, but McNish in the Porsche is alongside Nannini as they go down into the first corner. McNish is nosing ahead. Still the 2 Mercedes ahead, but look at McNish going round the outside of Nannini and Schneider going round the outside of Wurz. Schneider has the lead. It's Schneider, it's Wurz, but now McNish is alongside. McNish is alongside Wurz for second place, and he's through. Schneider going wide. Schneider on the dirt. McNish leads. What a magnificent start from young Alan McNish, leading the 3 Works Mercedes. We ride now with Gary Ailes in the Parabolica McLaren. Ahead of him is Collard's Porsche, but now the whole field are going swooping through the tortuous downhill S-bends of the corkscrew, and that Porsche leading the Mercedes. Yannick Dalmas has also passed Nannini's Mercedes, pushed that down to 5th place, and JJ Lato in the McLaren is 6th, ahead of Boutsen. Steve Soper is 8th. Now some sort of mechanical failure, I would guess. And this is Alexander Wurz off the circuit on the dirt. Alexander Wurz is off in the Mercedes. What has happened? He's now accelerating through a great cloud of dust back onto the circuit again, and that's what's happened. One of the GT2 Porsches T-bones Alexander Wurz. The 2 cars go off. This is very bad news early in the race for the Mercedes Challenge. Now into the pits very early. JJ Lato has come in. What is the problem? JJ Lato, the championship challenger, has brought the Schnitzer McLaren into the pits, and he's out of the car. JJ Lato out of the car. This looks very serious. It looks terminal. They're crawling all over the car, looking at the back of it. But JJ Lato's out. JJ Lato crash helmet off. He's walking away, and now in comes Alexander Wurz. He's just had that spin. He's done a couple of laps to see if all is well, and he's brought that car in. Still in the car, and they've got it up on the jacks, and they're going to take the front off, I think. They're going to have a look to see whether there is indeed any damage. The car doesn't look superficially damaged, but who knows what's happened underneath in that accident with the GT2 Porsche of Wolfgang Kaufmann. Now it's Alessandro Nannini's Mercedes coming in, and it's steaming and smoking at the back. They've got a fire extinguisher on it. It's not going well for 2 of the 3 Mercedes in this race, at least. Now, what happened? We see a replay. Nannini apparently hitting the back of Yannick Dalmas's car, and whether that did some damage, which has now forced the car. It's the Mustang which moves across Thierry Boutsen. The 2 cars collide. Most of the front of Thierry Boutsen's bodywork comes away, and yet again one of the slower cars getting in the way of one of the quicker cars. This is Thierry Boutsen's eye view. He comes up wanting to lap this traffic in front of him, and the Mustang moves across. You see it coming in from the right, clouts the bodywork, gets very, very sideways, gets himself straight, but now Thierry Boutsen has the bodywork absolutely flapping in front of his windscreen, dragging along with a still lit headlamp, and he's making his way to the pits. Now he's in the pit lane. Into the pit lane comes the number 6 Porsche with bits of bodywork falling off. The mechanics go straight to action, pull it away, pull out the remains of the electrical wiring, and now there's a new front section already waiting. On it goes, but that car has been badly delayed. But there's still a GT1 Porsche in the lead, of course. Alan McNish is driving absolutely magnificently. There he goes through the traffic, through the long downhill of the corkscrew. Alan McNish leads for Porsche. Bernd Schneider, the championship leader, is in 2nd place with his Mercedes. Yannick Dalmas is 3rd with his GT1 Porsche. And in 4th place now, up into 4th place has come Steve Soper with his McLaren, so the championship isn't done and dusted yet. Bernd Schneider 2nd, Steve Soper have their own battles and still keep out of the way of the quicker cars. And now, to underline the speed of the remarkable Alan McNish, he's coming up now to lap the talented Formula 1 driver Alex Wurz. He goes inside Alex Wurz, neat and determined and deliberate, and one wonders, with the form that Alan McNish is showing here in Laguna Seca today, why haven't Porsche been using him all season? Pantomime. And there's the lead car, Ralph Kellener's aboard. There is Alan McNish, the hero of the day. Alan McNish, after being a man to watch in Formula 3000, his career has been in the doldrums, but it's certainly come alive here in California today.
Alan, you made an absolutely storming start.
Yeah, I managed to get round Nannini at the first corner, slip inside the second guy, and the third guy made it easy. He just slid off the track and got into the lead. From there, I was surprised how easy I was able to stay in front. The Mercs pushed hard right at the end. I had a 4-second gap, but it dropped back because of traffic. And now I've handed over to Ralph. He should be okay
as well. 2 McLarens off. 2 McLarens are off. The yellow Parabolica car, Gary Ailes still at the wheel, and that's the Roberto Ravaglia car. Ravaglia has just taken over from Steve Soper, and his wheels are in the gravel trap, the back wheels. He doesn't seem to be able to dig himself away, and that could be the championship decided. Well, the GT2 championship is far from decided. We ride with Bruno Eichmann and slithering through the Nannini Tiemann GT1 Mercedes, and Mercedes are now leading this race because following the Alan McNish pit stop, which took much too long, they had a problem with the wheel brace. That allowed the Schneider Mercedes, now driven by Klaus Ludwig, there it is, the one with the yellow mirrors, into the lead. Yannick Dalmas and Bob Wallach in their GT1 Porsche are now second. And the Alan McNish Porsche, driven now by Ralph Kellener's, is in third place. And Roberto Ravaglia's managed to get that McLaren out of the gravel. He's driven it round, he's got it to the pits. So Ravaglia's car back, that's the Parabolica one, getting bodywork repairs. They put Chris Goodwin in the car, so Chris Goodwin takes it back into the race. There's Gary Ailes looking at the computer to see where they're really placed. And the Ravaglia Soper car being worked on. There's quite a large portion of the bodywork missing just in front of that right-hand rear wheel, but they're changing the right-hand rear wheel. They're clearly going to get it back in the race. Roberto Ravaglia in the car, and that means that Steve Soper's championship challenge goes on. And as Klaus Ludwig's got a little bit of traffic to cope with because he's got the GT2 battles just in front of him. The Viper there, just ahead of him, is the Gash Beretta Viper. He goes past the GT2 Porsche with no problem at all, but the Viper ahead of him as they go down that long, twisting, plunging section, the corkscrew, of course. And the Viper still ahead of him as in the pits, Nannini gets ready for his final stint. And also getting ready, Alexander Wurz, there he is, Wurz, the very tall young Austrian. And there's Bernd Schneider, the championship leader, with his seat ready. These drivers change their seats when they change drivers. That's the way that they get comfortable. He's got his name on it so that he makes sure he picks up the right seat. That could be very worrying if he gets the wrong one. There's a Parabolica pit stop, and it looks as though Parabolica have called it a day. That car stationary in the pits as in comes Klaus Ludwig. Klaus Ludwig comes down the pit lane. One of the Mustangs in front of him pulls across into its pit as the Mercedes with yellow mirrors, the leading car, comes in. Klaus Ludwig comes to a halt right on the spot. The tyres are ready, and Bernd Schneider opens the door, gets him out, and gets himself in. GT1 Porsche's battling on meanwhile. Yannick Dalmas ahead of Ralph Kellener's. Kellener's in the number 47 car, which will be handed over to Alan McNish before very long. McNish down here in the pits, waiting and ready and longing to get back at the wheel of that car. That's Jean-Marc Gounon in the McLaren in fourth place, but now Ralph Kellener's has brought the McNish Porsche into the pits. McNish takes over and leaves the pit lane now. Let's hear it. And off goes Alessandro Nannini. Alessandro Nannini, a big dusty moment. He gets it back onto the circuit once more, but that was Alessandro Nannini getting it all wrong in the big V12 Mercedes, and that is further indication that the Mercedes just aren't nimble enough to get, we see it again, he gets on the opposite lock, but the car slides onto the dusty runoff area. These Mercedes are just not as nimble as the GT1 Porsches round here, but that's Steve Soper. Steve Soper fighting on. You can see the great gap in the bodywork at the right-hand side of this car because of the damage it sustained when it collided with the Parabolica McLaren earlier on. But Steve Soper, he's a long way down, but he's still driving hard. That's the second place. Oh, and one of the Mustangs has gone off in a big way in the corkscrew. That's the Shirl van car. It's hit the wall and the front is very badly damaged. He's still on the circuit, but there's a lot of debris. We see it again. He hits on one side, then he spins across the road, a lot of debris. The GT1 Porsches picking their way through. There's one of the Lotuses going through. And look, there's an advertising hoarding wrapped over the air intake of the leading Schneider car as a result of that accident. The Mustangs have not made the best impression, I think it's fair to say, in this race. And a lot of them ahead of him, but he is now in second place. He's going to win the GT2 championship if nothing goes wrong on this final lap. And the man who's going to win the GT1 championship, with Alex Burtz following him, it's Bernd Schneider who gets onto the final straight of the final race of the 1997 GT season. The checkered flag waves. Bernd Schneider is GT1 champion, and here come the Vipers. Justin Bell is going to be second. Sarah cheers him home, and Justin Bell is second in GT2. Justin Bell is GT2 champion. And the celebrations in the Mercedes pit around Klaus Ludwig, the co-driver. Here is Bernd Schneider waving at the crowd, bringing that travel-stained Mercedes home.
These are the other champions, Mercedes taking the team and driver GT1 titles. Bernd Schneider finished in style, his 6th win of the season, and a great performance from Scotsman Alan McNish, proving his worth in the Porsche, 3rd place in a rare appearance in this GT series. Bad news though for Panoz, they've been disqualified from 6th and 14th, both cars failing their scrutineering checks after the race. These are the season standings, Bernd Schneider eventually finishing well clear of Leto and Soper, but it wasn't until these final 2 races that their challenge dissolved.
Okay, today they were really unlucky, and I was in Mugello, but this is racing, you know. It was very open, everything until the end, and that time it was worked out for us. Maybe the other time is for them, but today we were happy and we will have the party. Maybe next time they are.
Well, I think it's good we could take the championship to the last race of the year, but unfortunately for us, the wrong person and the wrong car won. But I mean, we did have a good year. We had 4 wins, and basically it was good driving with JJ. We had a good relationship, and I enjoyed it very much. And maybe we'll do something again next year.